D. Mace Fingan and Donick 1025, 1063 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, David Janes, intern Emily, all here with you today. Willie comes in with a neon-colored. Is it a windbreaker?
What is that?
It's
T-shirt?
a pullover. Kind of a pullover.
Oh, pullover.
Long sleeve.
And lo and behold, Willie also pulls out a yellow Gatorade.
Yeah.
This is a green Gatorade.
No, that's a yellow.
Put them together.
Put
them together, Willie. Clearly two very different colors.
Yes.
Slightly, but both on the green side.
No.
That's clearly yellow.
That's green.
Clearly
That's yellow.
Let's not even do the Gatorade thing.
Let's not pick at that staff.
This is definitely green, though. We
That
agree on this.
That is green.
This
That
is
is
like
green.
Baylor, like when Baylor wears the neon.
Mm-hmm.
They were the first team that I think I saw
Or Oregon.
do it.
Oregon does that color a little
Have
bit.
they gotten this? There actually is yellow.
The Seahawks,
but they
wore
have that
color quite a bit.
The Seahawks have this in their scheme. Yes, absolutely.
We're not going to pick at that scab.
Yes, we're not doing
Is
that.
this Gatorade yellow or green?
The whole show would go down the tubes.
We are going to do some scab picking later in the program. I'm going to have Titans fans. You're going to have to enter the dark recesses of your mind because I have an exercise that we're going to do. And it might be a little bit painful, but you know what? That's how we all heal, by just facing the pain head on. And we will do that. We will do that in the second hour of the program. Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst, will join us at noon, a little later than usual, because in our next segment, new Predators defenseman Nick Perbix will join us. Nick Perbix having his introductory news conference, I believe, as we speak. And right after he's done with that, he will hop on the phone with us at around 11:20, 11:25. So looking forward to talking to new Predators defenseman Nick Perbix. But we're going to start the show with the latest from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN. As we know, for the past several years, Jeremy Fowler has been putting together these lists. He does it in the beginning of July, which is perfect for us because we're waiting for training camp in a couple of weeks. And he surveys league executives, coaches, and scouts to help him rank the top 10 players at 11 different positions. So he started this exercise yesterday with running backs. Today is defensive tackles. And I was incredibly intrigued by this list because I wanted to see where the NFL had Jeffery Simmons. And before I looked at where he fell on this list, I went back and looked at where he fell on previous editions of this list. And quite the snapshot in time, guys. He debuted on the list in 2021 at number 6, with an NFL general manager being quoted as saying, "No one is Aaron Donald, but he," meaning Jeffery Simmons, "might be the closest." That was in 2021. Now, that GM may have been onto something because that season, Jeffery Simmons had a career year, I believe 8.5 sacks. In 2022, he skyrocketed from number 6 to number 2, with an NFL scouting director saying, quote, "One of the best defenders in football, right behind Aaron Donald as far as tackles. He's the scary guy you don't want to see." And over the past couple of years, he's fallen down the list. So he was number 2 in 2022, number 3 in 2023, number 4 in 2024. And on the latest edition of this list by Jeremy Fowler, Jeffery Simmons maintains his number 4 spot. So Jeffery Simmons, the number 4 defensive tackle in the NFL, according to the league execs and coaches and scouts. I almost said couches. Coaches and scouts that Jeremy Fowler surveyed for this list. And I'll be honest with you guys, I was surprised to see Jeffery Simmons still in the top 5. But it also begs the question, Derek, how much of our views of Jeffery Simmons, how much of our views are skewed by the fact that we watch him every single week? Or are football people caught up in the name recognition? They know Jeffery Simmons as one of the top defensive tackles in the NFL. Maybe they're not watching him. They're not game planning for him on a regular basis. So are we wrong or are they wrong? It's sort of where I was going with this.
I think it's not necessarily that one is wrong and the other, and the other's right. it's about how we see it. You know, how close are we to the actual, situation. And we're very close. But even though we're very close, we don't look at players, at least, a lot of us, some of us try to, but we don't look at players the way coaches and scouts look at players. We look at players, and I'm saying we as the masses. We look at people based upon what they did, that year. Oh, you had this great year last year. This year you fell off. This year it wasn't so great, so you fell off. You're not a good player. They look at it from the metrics. You and Willie go at it from the metrics, the numbers. And this is what these scouts and coaches do as they're watching the film. So when Jeffery Simmons comes out, there's a reason Jeffery Simmons comes out each and every time and say, I'm double teamed, because that's what they're saying in the meetings. They see what we're not looking at. I'm talking about the masses again. They're seeing what we're not. When we're watching the game, we're not watching the interior lineman. We're really not as much. We want the quarterback to get rid of the ball very quickly and get it to the receivers. That's what we want to see. We're not trying to zero in on what the defense or who's double teaming who and what he's supposed to do. A lot of this, we don't even know what he is supposed to do on this play. That's why, when people get on Jeffery Simmons like he's not a good player, you got to understand you don't even know half of it. You don't know if he was supposed to hit that gap. Was he supposed to, take on two so the other guy can loop around him? You have no damn idea what's going on. But yet and still, we look at the numbers and say, well, he's not playing well. And we all are at fault at it.
I would take it a step further. They're looking at one number.
Yeah. Sacks. That's all they're looking at.
And there are so many other things a defensive tackle does besides sacks. And sacks are always great.
His sacks got to come up, yes.
Yeah. But all of these other things he grades well in. Mm-hmm. And we're going to get into the sack part of it because there's something that I don't know that anybody has brought up that I should have thought of, honestly, before this. And once again, this will be a lot like my argument for UC Saros, trying to defend him during a rough patch of an otherwise great career, which I think we can say Jeffery Simmons is in that. He's in a rough patch of a great career. And
the team is as well.
And when you get paid a lot and the team is struggling and you're not playing as well as you can play, you get criticized. And that is 100% in bounds. But we're trying to put in context what is going on with the team and how that affects a player.
And we are going to dig into that later in the hour. But here is what Jeremy Fowler wrote about Jeffery Simmons landing at number 4 on this list. By the way, the highest ranking that Simmons received was number 4. The lowest ranking he received was unranked. So there were people surveyed for this list that did not have Jeffery Simmons on their ballot, I guess you could say. And here is what Jeremy Fowler wrote, quote, Simmons has been a staple in the top 10 due to unique power that some evaluators consider the best in the league. He has risen to as high as number 2 on the list because of the problems he gives opposing guards and centers. But evaluators are trying to make sense of his lack of production last season, including 5 sacks and 9 quarterback hits, the latter of which ranked next to last in the top 10 or honorable mention categories among players who played most of or all of last season. From one NFC executive, quote, still dominant versus the run. I didn't see the same pass rush explosion. Others cut Simmons slack, noting that playing on a bad team without much support on the outside is a factor. One coach noted that Danico Autry, a Titan from 2021 to 2023 before signing with Houston as a free agent, was an underrated edge rusher next to Simmons, and that the two played off each other well.
When he was healthy.
And here's the quote that we are going to get into a little bit later from an NFL coordinator. Quote, morale gets low, and it's hard to rush when you're always playing from behind. Still one of the most complete players. But that is the quote that Willie was referring to, and that is the quote that we are going to dig into in a little bit.
Yeah, because it got us going on when you're always playing from behind, because the basic thing is when your team is behind, the other team doesn't have to pass very much.
They're going to run the football.
And so that got us thinking, well, what do the numbers show? And we're going to share the numbers. And I do think it could give you some perspective. And this, again, is going to be couched with this.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that Jeffery Simmons had a great year last year. This is where I want to make sure we're on the front end saying this. This was not the best Jeffery Simmons. We haven't seen the best Jeffery Simmons in a couple of years, really, with injuries and the way the team is done. But there are reasons to hope for a bounce back if some other things can fall in line, if the team does better.
I think you'll get the bounce back. One is because I don't think people truly understand when you're going from one defense to the next how difficult it is to to sort of mesh as the season is going, because you're trying new things and then you got guys hurt on the outside. So it may, sort of take you away from what you really want to do. And everybody's learning the defense at one time. So, Denard Wilson, he can't put it all in. He can't just throw it all in and expect people to know it. It takes time for that defense. Just like the defense to me is sort of like the offensive line. The longer they play together, and if they're good, and if they got good players, the longer they play together, the better they become. Why? Because everybody knows their assignment and position, where they're supposed to be within that defense. There's a lot of communication. Last year, they tried to get that communication going, and it wasn't going as well. That is critical when you're trying to learn a new defense. Having someone that can spit out the defense and communicate with everybody else. So, one, I think Jeffery Simmons suffered from being in a new defense. I truly believe he did. And then two, I think this defense for Jeffery, I think he has to understand that this second year coming back, he and the big fella they have to work in tandem. And they got to work in tandem so much where it's not audible. It's okay, we see the front, we know exactly what we're doing. We're helping one another. And that's going to, because I'm telling you this, Big Sweat is going to start getting more attention than Jeffery Simmons. Why? Because he commands two blockers, and he's going to continue to get stronger and push individuals back to the quarterback. And that is going to free Jeffery Simmons up. He's going to learn that. He's going to be able to play off that. So I think this year will be more in line with what we saw from Jeffery Simmons in the earlier years than what we've seen in the last 2 years.
Well, let me ask you this question, Derek, because I was listening to Big Joe Dubin and Nick Frazier talk about this earlier. And we know Big Joe, he's an old school guy. Mm-hmm. And he was defending Jeffery Simmons, saying it's not an interior defensive lineman's responsibility or his primary responsibility to sack the quarterback. It's about commanding double teams and freeing up other players to get to the quarterback. I hear that, but then I think the counter argument would be that Jeffery Simmons is one of the highest paid players at his position in the NFL. Shouldn't we expect more from Jeffery Simmons than taking up double teams and opening up lanes for other players, especially since the Titans, though this is not necessarily Jeffery Simmons' fault, they didn't get to the quarterback last year. So where do you fall in that argument?
It's like this. I talk about my children a lot. If you've shown me you can give me an A, then give me an A. If you've shown me that you can give me an A in that particular class over and over again, why am I settling for B's and C's? Because you've shown me you can do the work. So if you're giving me a B or C, something's wrong here. Don't say you can't do it, or don't make any excuses. It's about you, not about them. I see it the same way with Jeffery Simmons. He's shown us who he is. He's a 8-sack guy. That's what he is, 9.5 sack guy. So if that is the case, give it to us or give us more. You've shown us the all-pro Jeffery Simmons. They paid you for it. Now we don't want to see anything less. And I get it. That's sort of unrealistic at times. But when you set that bar high and we know you can achieve it, then we expect you to achieve it for a time period of at least 4 to 6 years. And you haven't given us the 4 years of consistent, like that dominant play. You've given us 2 years. We're waiting on 2 more or possibly even 3 to string along. So when we see Jeffery Simmons, you've done it. I understand what Joe is saying in a sense, but the defensive linemen from Joe's day, my day, you know, Willie, when he was a youngin, that defensive lineman is gone. You know, Big Saragusa, Sam Adams, they're big, but they expect you to get to the quarterback now. We didn't expect Sam Adams or Saragusa to get to the quarterback. We just expected them to eat up 2 blockers. And they expected Ray Lewis to shoot through the hole or one of those edge guys. But in today's defense, when you've shown us what you can do, there's no more, oh, he's not supposed to get it, because you've shown us you can do it. When you're ranked as the 4th best interior lineman, that means you're getting sacks, so they expect you to get sacks. That's what it means.
615-737-1025. Jeffery Simmons comes in at number 4 on Jeremy Fowler's list of the top defensive tackles, I should say, in the NFL. Too high, too low, just right. Number 4 for Jeffery Simmons. 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We will continue this conversation in a little bit, but coming up next, new Predators defenseman Nick Perbix, who signed with the Predators on July 1st, a 2-year contract. He will join us in the next segment. We will introduce ourselves and all of you to new Predators defenseman Nick Perbix. That's coming up next. 615-737-1025. Speaking of 1025, the game is teamed up with Pella Windows and the Nashville Humane Association for a puppy pet adoption this Saturday at Pella, 277 Mallory Station Road in Cool Springs from 10 to noon. For more details, visit thegamenashville.com/events. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, joined on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, by new Predators defenseman Nick Perbix. Perbix signed a 2-year contract with the Predators in free agency, and he joins us now. Nick, thank you so much for your time. Welcome to Nashville. How are you?
Good. How are you?
We are doing well. So let's talk about your free agency experience. As you weighed your options in free agency, what were the most important aspects you were looking for in a team, and why did the Predators check off the most boxes?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you just kind of want to go somewhere where you're wanted, they value you high, and then I believe that this team has the roster to do something. Obviously, they didn't make the playoffs last year, but I believe that make a playoff run, and so yeah, that was important also.
How much did you rely on your old teammate Steven Stamkos in making this decision? How much did you ask him about Nashville? How much influence would you say he might have had in this decision?
Yeah, I mean, it was good to obviously just have someone like him, someone you played with at the time in Tampa. He was a captain of mine. Just know he's on the roster, know that level of comfort going into a room, and so knowing that you'd have someone like that was definitely appealing for sure.
I'm curious about this, Nick. There has been a lot of discussion with, of course, the Lightning and now the Panthers winning so many championships in recent years. There has been a lot of discussion in the NHL about the no state income tax advantage that the Panthers have, the Lightning have, and the Predators have. How much did Tennessee's no state tax status influence your decision in signing with the Predators?
I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, it is a job here. So the more money you can make, I don't think anyone is going to say no. But at the end of the day, you do want to win a championship, and that's kind of the number one thing in all of our eyes. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, had something to do with it, but it wasn't everything.
Nick Perbix is with us. He is a brand new member of the Nashville Predators, and you know, one of the things that we talk about a lot, Nick, that it's hard for people that haven't played hockey to understand is the right shot versus the left shot. And obviously you being a right shot, it makes you a little bit more unique. It's almost like a left-handed pitcher in some ways. How would you explain it? Why there are so many more left shots than right shots in hockey?
Honestly, I've kind of asked that myself because I feel like everyone in the world is a right-handed person that you meet, at least when they pick up a pencil. So I don't know why left shot is so much more common, but honestly, I don't mind it being a right shot. Value goes up a little, and so it just comes into benefit. It comes to benefit me, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and you grew up in Minnesota, and of course, they call it the state of hockey for a reason. But I always like asking people from your state just to try to tell people down here just how big high school hockey is up there, because high school football just rules the roost down here, as you'll find out, which if you don't already know. Of course, you spent some time in Tampa. They play some high school football down there, but the unique culture of high school hockey in Minnesota, it's pretty special.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of said it. It's just the number one thing. I mean, I remember growing up, for me, as much as I'd love to say, and it was still a dream to play in the NHL. Like, the number one dream was just to win a state championship, a high school state championship. Kind of that dream of going to play where the Wild play. At the time, it was the XL Energy Center. I think they renamed it. I don't even know what it is now. But yeah, that was the dream. And then later on, honestly after high school, it was kind of when the focus shift on the goal of making the NHL, winning a Stanley Cup, kind of became more valued than what you would normally think, I guess you can say.
Yeah, and you decided to play your college hockey up there as well. And college hockey is also something that I think over the years, our market here in Nashville has learned a little bit more to try to, follow that. Programs like St. Cloud State, it's not in the Big Ten per se, but you play with the big boys up there. What was that experience like?
Yeah, no, it's part of the NCHC, which is kind of actually only just a hockey conference, whereas the Big Ten's football, basketball, and all the major sports, where, I feel like half the schools in the NCHC are the only D1 sport is hockey. And so, yeah, it's a hockey-based conference. And, I don't know what the stat is now, but I know when I was in school, I think we had won like 4 out of 5 or something like that. And so, yeah, definitely good hockey. A lot of players coming from there, and with that new rule change in college hockey, I'm sure many more will be coming from college hockey.
Well, that is a good point for sure. We're going to see a change there. What was the toughest adjustment for you going from college to pro?
I think the biggest thing I noticed was, at least being a defenseman in college, if you'd make a little mistake in the D zone, you had the ability to kind of either make up for it or neutralize it. Whereas in pro, if you make a mistake in the D zone, it's almost always a chance within 2-3 seconds. And so you just got to focus on that.
You were considered, sort of an under the radar guy. We Adam and I like to look at some of the analytic numbers. You did very well there. How much do you think you improved from the time you entered the league until this past season with the experience you gained?
I mean, I think it's just kind of a reps thing. The more reps you get at something, with this, in this case, being pro, kind of getting into a routine, kind of finding out what works best for me. And so, it's just kind of going to come naturally if you actually have the right intent behind everything. And so, yeah, just kind of with time, you're just kind of, I don't want to say bound to improve, because you got to focus on the right things, but it'll come if you put in the work and stuff.
And of course, playing in a winning culture like Tampa, then Adam asked you about Steven Stamkos, of course. And those were teams that will be remembered for a long time that you played for. How do you define the culture of Tampa Bay? What sets them apart in your mind?
I mean, I guess one thing, I don't know if this is a perfect way of saying it, but winning is expected, and the playoffs are expected. And so it's not like meant to be sound like a daunting thing, but it's just that's the goal for everyone. But at the same time, like, if you're expecting that, I feel like it just kind of comes more naturally, whereas you're not surprised when you get there.
Nick, we've talked a lot about the Predators' struggles last year, and the philosophical discussion of are the Predators going to change the way they play, change the way they defend? They certainly struggled in that area last year, and you, of course, are a big part of it. Nick Hague is going to be coming in, bigger guys, and I'm just wondering what the talks have been like for you of how Andrew Burnett and Barry Trotz have discussed how the team wants to go about it next year. What's that been like for you?
Honestly, we haven't really got into many of the X's and O's of what the changes will be. Haven't got into what last year exactly was like, with it being in the Western Conference and me playing in the Eastern Conference. I don't know a crazy amount about it, other than when we'd quick do the summary of the pre-scout of when we'd play these guys. And so, I mean, bad answer maybe, but yeah, I don't have an answer right now, because I don't totally know. That'll come.
Nick, I know that in Tampa you had many opportunities to play on the same pair as Victor Hedman over the years. How did that experience help you grow as a player? And were you at any point starstruck when you first broke into the NHL and had an opportunity to play with a defenseman who is bound for the Hall of Fame when his career is over?
Yeah, no, honestly, like he did a great job of like kind of making everyone feel welcome in those aspects. And so when I was actually in his presence, I wouldn't necessarily notice it, but obviously playing with him, the game's a lot easier when you play with, like you said, a future Hall of Famer. But where I'd notice it is when you go out in public and stuff, and you'd see the signs of him and people wearing his jerseys and stuff, and then kind of realizing, oh wow, that is my D partner. I play with that guy, and I mean, the Stamkos is kind of the same thing. That's when you realize kind of what kind of privilege you have. And so, I mean, there are many guys like that too.
New Predators defenseman Nick Perbix joining us on D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick. Nick, thank you so much for your time. I know that you've got some house hunting to do. I hope that you can find the perfect place for you and your family. Welcome to Nashville, and I'm sure we'll touch base through the course of the season.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Nick Perbix joining us on the program. Interesting guy. I liked it.
I'm curious how, he's a guy that played a lot of college hockey, I think 4 full years, if I saw this right. Was not a high pick. Yeah, 4 years at St. Cloud State, 6th round pick, but made it to the NHL pretty quick as a regular. And I think it's fair to say each year he's he's strengthened his profile a little bit. As you mentioned, he didn't play as much on the first pair with Hedman last year because they shook things up. They brought Ryan McDonough back, as we know.
You have to keep that in mind. I thought this was pretty funny. Jared, in reaction to the signing of Nick Perbix, said, hold on a minute. This guy is a right-handed defenseman who played with Victor Hedman, and he was only able to receive a 2-year deal worth less than $3 million per season. Something must be wrong with this guy. And was looking at his ice time. And I said, you have to keep in mind who came back. Ryan McDonough. Ryan McDonough took a lot off of Perbix's plate last season. He took a lot of defensemen's plate in Tampa last season. So I think that's important context to keep in mind when you're digging into the numbers. But as you said, Willie, you and I love to dig into the numbers, and we will continue to dig into the numbers of Jeffery Simmons here in just a few minutes. But his profile is of a steady, solid defenseman. There may not be something he does exceptionally well, but he does a lot of things well. That would be my description of Nick Perbix based on his analytical profile.
He does have steady analytics, which is something that a lot of people look at. And there are some defensemen in the league, and I think Nick Hague probably falls into this category, at least from an offensive standpoint, that while they are very well respected up and down the league and quote unquote hard to play against, it doesn't always translate to good analytics. Perbix is 6'4", but his analytics are good. So he does a lot of little things that probably don't show up. You're not going to be wowed by goals and assists. And I think we're all curious of how the partners end up shaking out. And I'm sure on this day, July 9th or whatever it is, or July 8th, that they aren't sure who's going to end up being the pair. I think you could have a theory that, for example, Brady Shea and Roman Josi might be a good pair. And that was anything but the case last year. And who knows, maybe next year Shea and Josi end up playing better together. But I think they've got some flexibility. They know that Perbix will be on the right side with somebody, whether that's Shea or Josi. And then Hague can play the left side and the right side. Josi can play the left side and the right side. You've got Nick Blankenberg, who they already know had some good chemistry with Brady Shea. The wild card, of course, is Tanner Molendyk. And then maybe the second wild card is Barron, right? I think Barron could definitely be on the right side of the third pair, and you've got a guy that's got some skill, some really high-end skill at times, and you can continue to bring him along slowly. And maybe he makes a jump and he could play on a second pair. We'll see. But there's I think more avenues and flexibility of what to do with the 6 guys or 7 guys than last year when they had Carrier got hurt, Lazan got hurt. When they were together and healthy, they didn't play very well. Shea and Josi didn't mix at all. They had a lot of problems from the get-go that threw their whole defensive scheme out of whack. I think they have a better chance of getting off to a good start this year. But the big question I think we both have, Adam, is what is the defensive system going to be compared to last year? Are they going to play a little bit more stay at home, protect the house, and not quite as innovative, get the puck moving, etc.? That remains to be seen.
615-737-1025. We thank Nick Perbix for joining us. Looking forward to hockey season in, 3 months. We'll have NFL training camp here soon enough, and we will get back into Jeffery Simmons. Again, number 4 on Jeremy Fowler's list of the top 10 defensive tackles in the NFL, according to the league people he surveyed. There was something that was said in the blurb, I guess you could say, of Jeffery Simmons that we've pounced on. And speaking of crunching numbers, it was like a bat signal for me. So I did some research this morning, and we will get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025. You can also let us know if you think Jeffery Simmons is properly ranked, too highly ranked, or not ranked high enough. Let us know. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game.
Happy Tuesday, everyone. This is Derek Mason, and you heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff over at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a goal to shed some extra pounds only to face disappointment. But I got some good news and I got some solutions, because at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffery Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and you only. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
D-Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game. Hey, the Borchetta Bourbon Music City Grand Prix is coming to the Nashville Super Speedway Labor Day weekend, and 1025 The Game has your chance to win VIP tickets to the IndyCar race by texting in the keyword race, R-A-C-E, now to 615-737-1025 to be entered to win a pair of VIP tickets. For more information on the event, visit MusicCityGP.com, MusicCityGP.com. So, Jeffery Simmons is number 4 on Jeremy Fowler's list of the top 10 defensive tackles in the NFL. Again, according to Fowler, he surveys league executives, coaches, and scouts to help rank the top 10 players at 11 different positions. Here is the rankings process. Voters gave Fowler their 10 best players at a position Then ESPN compiled the results and ranked candidates based on number of top 10 votes, composite average, and dozens of interviews with research and film study help from ESPN NFL analyst Matt Bowen. In total, more than 70 voters submitted a ballot on at least one position, and in many cases, all positions. Additional voting and follow-up calls with those surveyed helped break any ties. So Jeffery Simmons, number 4 on the list. And there was a quote at the bottom from an unnamed NFL coordinator. This about Jeffery Simmons, quote, morale gets low and it's hard to rush when you're always playing from behind. Still one of the most complete players. Now, Willie read that and said, I wonder about that particular quote. And I wonder about how often the Titans were playing from behind. And like a bat signal in the sky, except it wasn't a bat. It was more like an abacus, maybe a calculator. I said, I'm on it. I'm going to do it.
Let's go
That
with
might
the
be
light
the first
bulb.
time in history a bat has been compared to an abacus in any way.
I forgot to mention last week that I did come up with a new name for the Robbie and Rex Road program. Goutman and Robbie. Instead of Batman and Robin. Goutman and Robbie. So I enlisted Ian.
Oh, my goodness.
I enlisted Ian to come up with a da-na-na-na-na-na-na Goutman. Goutman. All right, sorry about that. I just had to.
Joe, man.
Or Joe.
Goutman.
Joe, you just catch him. It doesn't matter, but go ahead.
Goutman and Robbie. If you're looking for a new name, guys. So I did a couple of different. I went about this a couple of different ways, but here is the most interesting thing I found. So I compared Simmons last season to Simmons from the 2021 season, which was his breakout season. He had 8.5 sacks, which is still a career high. I believe he was a second-team All-Pro that season. So last season, Jeffery Simmons played 773 snaps. And I looked at how many he played when the Titans were ahead, how many he played when the Titans were behind, and how many he played when the Titans were tied, and then looked at the percentage. So last season, 35.2% of Jeffery Simmons' snaps came when the Titans were leading. 35.2%. 49%, so about half, came with the Titans trailing. And 15.8% came when tied. So again, 35.2% of Jeffery Simmons' snaps last season came when the Titans were protecting a lead. Compare that to 2021, when he played 51.1% of his snaps when the Titans were ahead. So 51.1% in 2021 when the Titans were leading versus 35.2% this past season. So I thought that was quite interesting, looking at the discrepancy, the disparity, whatever word you want to use, looking at the number of snaps Jeffery Simmons played when the Titans were leading 4 years ago, 3 years ago versus last season. A difference of 16 percentage points, a huge gap.
Huge gap. I look at it this way, just to try to put it in as simple terms as possible. I feel better about the sack number because we get hung up on a number, and D Mace is always talking about that it's much more about the percentage. Are you winning your matchup? There's all these things we have now that can tell us these things, but there's still always going to be a romance with the sack number. But his sack number last year was what? 5?
5.
And they faced how many passes?
According to the NFL, Titans opponents ran 505 pass plays, the fewest in the NFL.
Fewest in the NFL.
By a margin of 34. The next closest team, the Washington Commanders, at 539.
And that really doesn't have to do as much with the run defense versus the pass defense. It's simply that when you're behind, in general, in football, I don't care if you're playing high school, college, or pro, you are more apt to run the ball when you're ahead because you want to keep the clock running. You don't want to take as much risk. It's very simple, fundamental football. So when you're constantly behind, the other team isn't needing to pass that much. So if I am a pass rusher and I get 500 chances, and of course he's not in on every play, but let's just say there are 500 chances I have to get a sack. And Derek plays on a team where he has 600 chances to get a sack. Well, you do the math. It's a lot easier for Derek to get 3 or 4 more sacks than I get. So it's because he has 100 extra chances to get sacks than I do. That's simply opportunity. And the more times you're out there, it's like a guy that has 600 at-bats and has 30 home runs versus a guy who has 300 at-bats and has 30 home runs. Who's the better power hitter? It's the guy that has the 30 home runs and 300 at-bats. But they're both, quote, 30 home run hitters. So I never thought of that. I probably should have, but I feel a little bit better about the sack number than I did before. And as I said at the beginning of the show, this isn't to say that was a great year by Jeffery Simmons by any stretch, but that is a little context as to why that sack number was so low.
And by the way, Derek, so as I said, Titans opponents ran 505 pass plays last season, by far the fewest in the NFL. The league average, I had to use my abacus/calculator and add all of this up and then divide it by 32. The NFL average was 598.
98. Okay, so that's
598.
So after, let's say that the three of us, we're playing on the defensive line, an awesome defensive line. Donick, Vingan, and Mason. And we'll throw David in. We got to have a front four, right?
Yeah.
So let's get David in there. So after 500 passes, we all have 5 sacks. But now D-Mace gets 100 more chances to rush the quarterback. Who's going to lead the team in sacks?
Probably Derek.
Right.
Yeah.
So see, I mean, so if he just gets 3 more, then I think we would probably. So if Jeffery Simmons had 3 more because they had 600 passing attempts instead of 500, we might feel a little bit better about the sack number because we get so hung up on the sack number.
One more number for you, Derek. Again, so the Titans opponents ran 505 pass plays last season. In 2021, because that was the season I isolated, Titans opponents ran 671 pass plays. So the year that Jeffery Simmons had a career high in sacks, Titans opponents ran 166 more pass plays.
So you're going to get more sacks. You're just by math, just by being out there, you're going to stumble on a couple more sacks because they were ahead more. The other teams have to pass. And by the way, when you're ahead and the other team has to pass, how much easier does it get to rush the quarterback? Way easier.
Well, you pin years.
That's when you
back.
get your sacks.
Yeah, you pin years back, and it's not necessarily about you being behind. It's when are you behind? That's when it really, the rubber meets the road. Because if you are behind in the fourth quarter with 5 minutes left in the game, you got the ball. You're more, the offensive coordinator is more apt to call pass plays. If you're down,
and risky pass plays.
You're
right?
down 7 points in the first quarter. He's just going to stick to his game plan. He's going to run the football. So my whole thing with Jeffery is not necessarily that you had 45 to 50 less opportunities. It's what did you do with the opportunities that you had? I mean, what was your win rate on the opportunities that you had? What was your win rate? Because we can continue to break this down, as we go. What was your win rate when you were, matched up one-on-one? What was your win rate on blitz? What was your win rate when you were double team? So all this stuff you have to break down. And if you still were not winning on your singles, you're not going to win in your doubles, and your sack numbers are going to go down. But if you out there for 250 plays and you are singled 100 times, I expect you to win 90% of those or 90% of those matches.
That's a much more important evaluation.
Absolutely. I expect you to win. So how many of those were you winning? And even those double teams, I expect you to win damn near half of those because you are an elite pass rusher. I guarantee you, Aaron Donald saw more double teams than probably anybody within the last 10 years.
I think I might have an answer for you.
Okay.
According to ESPN, I think this must be from last season. Jeffery Simmons, this is DT pass rush win rate rankings. Jeffery Simmons ranked 10th. He had 22 wins on 189 plays, a percentage of 12%. He was double teamed 59% of the time.
Okay, so
if I'm reading all of that correctly.
that has to come up. It does. Because you're considered an elite player.
Number 1 on the list, no surprise, Chris Jones.
Yes.
34 wins in 214 plays, a pass rush win rate percentage of 16%, double teamed 70% of the time.
And he's still that's what I'm talking about. Because Jeffrey has shown us that already. So you can't show it to us and then use it as a crutch and say, well, they're double teaming me, man. It's like, dude, you are considered one of the best interior guys in the league. Jones, he 70% double team, and he's still getting.
But I think the Chiefs have a couple. There are
the
other
Chiefs
things
defense,
going for the things that we've talked about.
Their defense is a little bit better. Yeah, coordinator, I believe he's a little bit more seasoned and better.
Yeah, they have other guys that are capable. Whereas the Titans right now, they just didn't have another real threat. Harold Landry, we talked about. He is who he is. He was paid well to be a good rusher, but he's not the guy that strikes fear like a Javon Curse in the heyday, or the best edge rushers in the league. You're like, man, how are we going to stop that guy? The Titans just didn't have that guy, really. So that hasn't helped Simmons. And also the passes that they're throwing, because they were behind so much. And remember how often they were getting behind early, right? The passes that are thrown are probably going to be less risky passes with getting the ball out quicker. There's all these little things that I think make it harder for Jeffery Simmons to get the numbers that Jeffery Simmons, we all hope that he ends up getting.
How do you affect the quarterback without touching the quarterback? That's what, we have to figure out how is he affecting the quarterback without even touching the quarterback? And that goes to the win rates. If your win rate is high, you may not touch the quarterback. You may force him to get rid of the ball faster than what he wants to. And then what happens? The guys on the other side ends up getting interceptions. That's what I'm talking about. Your win rate on single and double blocks is crucial. I'm not asking you to get a sack every play or every double team. What I'm doing is asking you to affect the passer where your guy behind you, whether it be the linebacker or the secondary guys, they benefit from it. You may not get the sack, but they get the interception or the pass breakup.
615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We will continue this conversation coming up next with Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst, and of course, head coach of the Ensworth Tigers. We'll do that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. D-Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service, and we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, joined on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, by our favorite dual threat quarterback, ESPN NFL analyst, head coach of the Ensworth Tigers, Tim Hasselbeck. How are you, Tim?
Doing great, fellas. How you doing?
We are doing excellent. So we are talking about Jeremy Fowler's latest list on ESPN.com. Today, he's ranking the top 10 defensive tackles with help from people around the league. Jeffery Simmons comes in at number 4, but there was a quote at the bottom that we have highlighted, and I would love your opinion on this because it's not something, frankly, that we had considered before we read it. An NFL coordinator quoted talking about Jeffery Simmons said, quote, "Morale gets low and it's hard to rush when you're always playing from behind." So as we are evaluating Jeffery Simmons, how much should we take that into account?
Yeah, look, I think it's fair. If you play on a good team that, competitive, and so teams are not, in a 4-minute offense, you're talking about a segment of the game that, you're either rushing the passer or you're just defending runs. I think that's, look, I think the team you play on, your scheme, the competitiveness of the games that you play in, all of those things, they factor in, right? Like there's a reason why, like you talk about scheme, Wes Welker was catching 100 balls, in New England, and no one knew his name, when he played for the Dolphins prior to that. So I don't think there's any question that scheme, kind of game flow situation because of the competitiveness of your team, and are you playing with leads and are teams throwing late in the game, can be a factor in terms of, how that guy's production is viewed statistically, and then also just in terms of what it actually looks like when you look at it at the end of the season, because the sample size at that point is big to say, all right, well, how many times in the fourth quarter, where the Titans, in a situation where there was a 10-point lead and the defensive line had an opportunity to get into their pass rush.
This new season of Quarterback on Netflix has premiered. Kirk Cousins is one of the quarterbacks featured on the program. And he made his most pointed comments, I guess you could say, about the Michael Penix situation. He said he felt, quote, "a little bit misled" when the Falcons took Michael Penix as high as they did in the draft last year, and said, "Hey, if I had known this," this is paraphrasing, "if I had known this, it would have affected my decision on leaving Minnesota and joining the Falcons." What are your thoughts on Kirk Cousins, peeling back the curtain a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think that's probably as pointed as you'll get from Cousins, right? Like he does a pretty good job of, I think, trying to operate with class. And, I think that nobody, like Kirk Cousins wasn't chasing money, right? Like I think he was looking for a good opportunity and feel like he was going to a place where he was wanted. He had done a good job in Minnesota. There obviously was a huge investment from Atlanta, but I don't think that he was looking to moving his family to Atlanta to have them draft a quarterback in the first round to basically, put a massive pause, hold, end, whatever you want to call it, to his career as a starter in the NFL.
We'll talk with Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst and head coach of the Ensworth Tigers. Tim, Willie had us watch a old school football game back in the 80s, and we'll talk about it later this week.
Get Tim involved in this.
We may just need to get him involved, and it got me to thinking about that era of quarterbacks, and we're talking about early 80s and into the early 90s. We're talking about guys like Joe Montana, Dan Marino, Fouts, Elway, Kelly, and there are a couple more guys you can throw on that list. Just like basketball, we look at like the era. This is the era that sort of changed the NBA, whether it was the Magic Johnson and Larry Bird era or the Michael Jordan era. All that era sort of changed the way the NBA is now. Do you think that era of quarterbacks, Montana, Marino, especially Marino, because I was watching Marino the other day, and the things that he was doing then, he could exactly do now, and it would perfectly fit what quarterbacks are taught in the systems that they are running now. So do you think that group of quarterbacks sort of ushered in what we see now?
Yeah, I think Marino,
from a pass
Elway,
standpoint.
From a what standpoint?
A pass standpoint, not necessarily running the football.
I think that Marino and Elway, because they were so physically gifted as throwers, like did things that, like, you know, other teams weren't necessarily saying, like, yeah, hey man, like, you know, we want you to try this. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think there was definitely an element physically that those guys could do things that was different. It changed things. And I think that there was a stretch after them, like an example, like Favre. Favre was a guy that was like, yeah, he's kind of playing by a different set of rules because, you know, he's got a hand cannon attached to his body, right? Like there's just there's some of that. I remember my brother actually being in Green Bay and Andy Reid saying to him, like, look, I want you to watch, but I don't want you to copy any of this stuff that he does outside the design of the play. Like, that's actually not for you. But I do want you to watch his leadership style and stuff like that. Like that's, you know, so I think that there was an element of that. And I think that there is an element now where, like, Mahomes definitely changed it with running this way, throwing it across your body. Like, there's no question that there have been some, you know, quarterback, like, cardinal sin things that you never do that, you know, Josh Allen, Mahomes, guys like that have kind of they've changed that for them a little bit. But I would still say that doesn't apply to everybody still, you know, like it doesn't apply to Kirk Cousins or Baker Mayfield or Tua or, you know, some of these other quarterbacks. So, yeah, I think there's always a change, and I think a lot of it has to do with, well, what are you like physically? And I think that you could go to other positions and say the same thing. Like, I think you would probably agree at receiver. Like, hey, man, like there are some guys that are, you know, 6'4" or taller that, like, yeah, they can get away with doing some things a little bit differently than the shorter receivers.
No, yeah, absolutely right. And the size, speed, shape of the receiver has changed from what it used to be. So with that being said, Tim, do you think that, you know, the position itself, it has reached its apex as far as, you know, what can be accomplished skill wise with that position? Or do you think the NFL is going to get to a point where everyone looks like, and I'm not talking about look like visually, I'm saying the way they play, like Lamar Jackson, where you have to have the ability to run to a level where it becomes a weapon for you? Because right now we're headed that way, but we're not there.
Yeah, I don't think that we ever get to a point where it's like that, because I think as good and as dangerous as the running can be, you still need to be able to win from the pocket. I've had the conversation with college coaches, I had the conversation with pro coaches. It's why the Indianapolis Colts, you know, have Daniel Jones, you know, theirs, because like what they were doing with Richardson, it wasn't trending to be able to work from inside the pocket. It's why, you know, Jalen Hurts' development inside the pocket is why he's won a Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson's development inside the pocket is why he's, you know, and probably an MVP candidate every year, you know, and it's why you're more likely to have success with Jared Goff or Matthew Stafford than you are with a guy that's not a good passer and can run around. So, like, while I think that the running is helpful and people like it and it's good, I don't think we ever get to a situation where it's like they're all these amazing runners and they've all been able to develop as passers the way that some of these other guys have. Like, I just I don't think that happens, because I think ultimately the throwing from inside the pocket is always going to be a better, more valuable quality than being able to take off as a runner.
No, and you're exactly right about that. But I think, and the only reason I pose that question to you is because I see it at the youth league where these
Yeah.
kids are, they are developing as passers, but they are athletes first. And
Yeah.
you have to have that ability because the rushers are getting faster. So you got to have that ability to get outside the pocket and be dynamic in that way. But knowing that, like you said, you got to win within the pocket.
I think there's kind of like a minimum athleticism threshold that you've got to hit in terms of being able to move around and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have the ability to complete passes from inside the pocket and stretch you, 53 1/3 wide and, 48 3, down the field, like if you don't have the ability to do that, then you're starting to minimize the effectiveness of the other players that give you an opportunity to score when you're on the field, right? Like that's the part for me is like, if you were to say, you look at some of these, let's look at the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
The Colts have good receivers, right? Like they've got like big, long, good, talented receivers that should be able to attack all areas of the field. But if you don't have a quarterback that can consistently complete passes in all areas of the field, then that, like you're impacting them, like you're impacting those guys. So like, I just think you're just less effective as a team. You're easier to defend. That's why I say the development of, some of these guys as passers, that maybe didn't come into the league as passers, like that to me is impressive. And it doesn't work for everyone. Like that's why, what Jalen Hurts has accomplished with the changes at coordinator and how he's developed as a passer, like that's an incredible feat. And I think Lamar Jackson, same way, coordinator change, develop as a passer, incredible feat. So I think those, I don't think we ever get to a scenario where we look at it and we go, every NFL team is starting an elite runner. I don't think that ever happens.
We're talking to Tim Hasselbeck, and Tim, I challenge. We're coming up with summer projects for July because we have to get to training camp before we have more meat to really sink our teeth into when it comes to football. So I have thrown out a sort of a rewatchable football 40 years ago. I picked a game that I just remembered as a kid. It was one of the most fun games that I remember from that time. I found it on YouTube, and we're going to talk more about it, sort of introduce it to our audience later. But you would be perfect for this. Just I thought of this as Derek asked you, because Derek's already sinking his teeth into it and coming up with stuff. And of course,
Derek recommended Michigan State, Iowa from
in the 90s. Yeah, right in the mid 90s. Yeah, right around there.
Well, we was dominant.
Yeah, but he was
random game. I thought
a random game. I happened to score 2 touchdowns, but yeah. But I picked a game. It was a Jets Dolphins game from '86.
Okay.
And I was just and your dad. What was his last year in the league?
86.
86. Okay.
It would have been 85.
So I'm sure you had plenty of talks in your family about how the game evolved. I don't know when the last time you watched a full game. I'm not just talking about a couple of highlights, but I was curious what you would see or what you would think you would see on how different the game looks. It really jumps out to me. There's the equipment, there's the face mask, there's the fans and what they're wearing. That's the fun part of it, really. The broadcasting is interesting to me. But from the scheme standpoint, I was going to D-Mace to sort of see what he thought was different. What would your dad say, and what do you think you would see?
Well, I'll tell you what I know I would see because I lived through this. So Joe Gibbs coached in that era, then took 12 years off of football and came back. And when he came back, I was with Washington at that time. So in that span of time, defensively, zone blitz was invented. So when you go back to, that era of football, like you would get like basic zone coverage, and then you would get man coverage, and oftentimes like any type of like significant, pressure, linebacker level or secondary level pressure was accompanied with man coverage. Like there weren't these zone blitzes, these simulated pressures that you see nowadays. So it was totally different. And the reason I say that I would know is like we lived it in Washington. It was like, yeah. Like, the game's changed a little bit, So like, beyond the receivers, in 3-point stances, out by the numbers, Like that is definitely, something that would stick out to me. I think offensively, run game stuff, you'd see a lot of the same stuff. You see different personnel groups. You see more fullbacks than you see in today's game, like that type of stuff. But I also think you go way back to that era. There's going to be less quick passing game, right? Like that's really where the West Coast offense started to change things. The ball was out quicker, guys on the move. Prior to that, there was a lot of down the field type throws. So I think there's a lot scheme wise that I would feel like looks drastically different.
Yeah, one thing that jumped out to me is the split backfield. You used to start to see that, and it was less in the mid '80s. But you go back to the early '80s, you had the two guys. You almost never see that now, right? The one guy on one the other.
On Friday night, Willie. Come over to Friday night. Okay. I'm just going to tell you right now, it's one of the first formations that goes in for us. Yeah, listen, Roger Craig and Tom Rathman, maybe like buckle your chin strap. Let's go.
But did you see it more? Like I was watching a game. I love doing this, and you can ask the question, Willie. Are you a real nerd? Yes, I am. I was watching a game where the Oilers were playing, and they had Rob Carpenter, who ended up being a pretty good running back for the Giants, and Earl Campbell in the same backfield.
Yeah.
And they were standing next to each other. Like, you didn't know who's going to get the ball, who was the lead blocker. They different things than they did back then.
Friday night, August 22nd, Ensworth High School, Frisk campus.
So is this some throwback offense you have, or is it coming back around in a cycle here?
Look, those are, when you have like those guys, like what you're talking about, and oftentimes you can find kids like that in high school for sure. Like let's say you've got two good running backs. Well, why not play them together? Like it's different. At certain levels, but part of the reason you don't see a ton of that in the pros is like, I'm not saying it specifically about Saquon, but like, he's like, nah, man, like it's not my job to jam my neck for him to carry the football. Like I'm a pro, I'm an all pro. I made it, right? Like what's different with, Rob Carpenter and other people back in that era was, no one really knew what anyone else was making. It was like, is it your turn to get the ball? Or is it my turn? Okay, that's my turn to block. Like, it's different now. You know what I mean? Hey, B. Mace wasn't running clear routes now. Like, there came a point that was like, hey, man, you got the clear. I'm running the in cut, right? Like, that's just so I think that's part of why you don't see it as much in the pros. I think you still do see it some in college, and you definitely can see much of it at the high school level, for sure.
Interesting.
Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst, head coach of the Ensworth Tigers, joining us on D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick as he does every week. Tim, great stuff as always. We'll catch up next week.
All right, I appreciate it. Hey, no, Willie was no middle reliever, okay? Once he signed the big contract.
That's right.
I'm a starter.
I need saves. I need wins. Give me the sexy stats. Yeah.
No holds for you, Willie.
No holds.
No holds for you, Willie. Thanks, Tim.
Yep.
615-737-1025. Okay. I have a Titans question with a twist. And to loosely quote one of the greatest bands of our time, Joe Rexroad, Papa Roach. Our scars remind us that the past is real. So it's time to tear our hearts open just to feel. And I'll explain why coming up next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game.
Let's tell you about F&M Bank. Banking made easy on purpose. 20 locations in our listening area. Lots of tools to help you do just that. Take your mind and not stress about the finances. We would all love to get to that place, and F&M Bank specializes in that. They're right in the middle of your community. and they like to build a relationship with you. And they've got tools like the Smart Swipe debit card that if you're just looking for a simple way to save money, you could turn your brain off and just make your daily purchases. All they do is they take every purchase you make, and if it's a purchase of $10.50, they're going to round up to the nearest dollar. So they round up to 11. You save the 50 cents in a savings account. They do that every time you use that debit card. And over time, that money's going to add up. Simple way to save money. Banking made easy on purpose. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. They got a lot of other tools as well. If you're a business owner, if you need a HELOC, anything in between, just check out their website at myfmbank.com. Find the nearest location to you. That's myfmbank.com. It's Take It to the Bank every Friday at 1:45. Thanks to F&M Bank, member FDIC.
Your pain, and I can't help you fix yourself. You're making me insane. All I can say is, tear my heart out.
Oh, a little Papa Roach. I know Joe Rexroad is loving this right now. But since I quoted Papa Roach, David James doing me a solid, bringing us back in with Papa Roach.
And you always have in the back of your mind, is there a swear word in the song?
That's literally
Every time.
That's
Every
literally what
time.
I just said to David.
Yeah.
I said, I don't think there's a swear in the
think
section of the
so.
song that we are. But, we're angsty. So,
We're a bunch of bad boys.
yes, we are. We're little emo boys on this show. So, here is why I brought up the scars remind us that the past is real, yada, 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 by Papa Roach. Here is something we're going to do right now, and I want you to participate. 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Here is the question. You can have one on-field, I emphasize that, one on-field do-over, one play in Titans history, but it cannot, I repeat, cannot be Kevin Dyson falling 1 yard short into the Super Bowl. Because if I didn't put that qualifier in there, all of you would say Kevin Dyson and the segment would be over. So we all know that Kevin Dyson is number one on a lot of your lists. But you could have one, count them, one on-field do-over in Titans history. It cannot be Kevin Dyson falling 1 yard short in Super Bowl 34. And I'm talking about one play. So it can't be a drive or a sequence of plays. It has to be one play. So again, on field. So if you text in and say, I want the Titans to do over the A.J. Brown trade, that's not the question. On field, do over. You get one in Titans history. 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And as we await your responses, I turn it over to Willie and Derek because I told them that we were doing this. Yeah, I told them we were doing this yesterday. So as you formulate your responses, I'm going to allow Willie and Derek to share theirs, and then we'll get to yours. So, Willie, you can have one on-field do-over in Titans history, but it cannot be Kevin Dyson falling 1 yard short in the Super Bowl. Your number one choice is?
Okay. I told you guys what mine was yesterday because it didn't take me very long to think about it. I kind of want it because, and when you told Derek we were doing this, D Mace texted and he said, within seconds after you put it out there, he says, I've got mine. I want to know if mine is the same as D Mace's, and I want to pull up the actual context of the game to get this right. First, we'll see if I've got the same game as D Mace, but I've got to go back to the most bitter loss in Titans history for sure. And that is the Titans-Ravens playoff game where the Titans had home field advantage. They're playing the Ravens in 2000. The Ravens went on to win the Super Bowl. It is a strange game from the get-go, but the one play is very simple. It's a slugfest. It's a 10-10 game in the fourth quarter with 12 and a half minutes to go. 4th and 1 at the Baltimore 19, but we know one thing about the Ravens defense. That was a nasty defense. Nowadays, I would say the 4th and 1, you're probably going to go for it most of the time. No matter what, right? It'd be like, hey, it's 4th and 1. Quarterback sneak. Jeff Fisher, unsurprisingly at the time, decides, hey, the Ravens can't score. Give me this field goal, and we're going to win this game 13-10. The Ravens in the game had 5 first downs in the game. But as we know, Al Del Greco had a rough game in that game. He had already had some issues before. And so the play, 12:25 to go, 10-10 game, fourth quarter, 12 and a half minutes to go, 37-yard field goal. Not a 47, not a 57, 37 yards. Not only does it get blocked, but it goes right to Keith Washington, who runs it all the way back for a touchdown. That is the biggest turnaround I think I've ever seen on one play in one game with those two individual teams. So that's the one play. To me, if he makes that field goal, the Titans win that game. And we're talking about, I think, back-to-back Super Bowl appearances.
Well, I mean,
was that yours?
It's
or
the same
do you have a
game.
different? You have a
It's the
different
same
play?
game.
Okay,
same game. Actually, I had 2, but it was the same game.
But different play?
Different play,
Okay.
same game.
Okay, so what's the play in your mind?
My play obviously was because, I mean, if you look at that game, go back and watch that game, or just go look at the stats. You would have thought, and don't look at the score.
Yeah.
Don't look at the score, just look at stats. You would have thought we won by at least 10 points. Easy 10 points. But then you watch the game and you see we lost the game. That was a key play. Block field goal, return for a touchdown. But then Baltimore is up 17-10 because I think it was after the return.
After the block field goal
after the block,
touchdown.
they're up 17-10. We are driving. We are at midfield.
Mm-hmm.
6 minutes left in the game. Steve dropped back, throws slightly behind Eddie, tips off of Eddie's hands. Ray Lewis is at perfect position. Well, actually, yeah, he's in a perfect position because Eddie beats him on a flat route, sort of out route. And if he catches it, if it's in front of him, Eddie catches it and turns up the field. But because he's so badly beat, he's behind Eddie. And he catches it and races for what ultimately is the game-winning touchdown. That play, same game, different play. Here's another play.
Only about 6 minutes apart.
Yes, here's another play. 2003 AFC divisional game, playoff against the New England Patriots.
Oh, boy.
We had completed 53% of our third downs in that game. That's what we ended up. And New England ended up damn near 50% too. They were like 40-some%. But this was a back and forth game. And when we started to open up the game a little bit more, New England really couldn't. They had no answers. We tried to play it in the phone booth, and New England had all the answers. We ended up scoring right before the half. Well, I did. Score right before the half. We go in. So we starting to open up the game. Fourth in, I think it was 4th and 10, somewhere around there. We're in 3 wides. Drew and I are set up to the left. I think McCarron's was to the right.
It was 4th and 12.
4th and 12. McCarron's to the right. I'm the slot guy, so I runs a clear route. I'm clearing it because I got to take the nickel and the safety is going to go with me. Everybody knows it. I'm running up the middle of the field. I'm going to eyes on me. And we knew that Drew would be wide open on the end route. We knew it. Defender was playing outside too. Drew runs a perfect route, and I mean perfect route. Drew was a good route runner anyway. Drew 6'5". Mac put it only where Drew can catch it. Drew, any other day, he could make this catch with his eyes closed. And I've seen him, he's made some great catches in a tight uniform. But on this day, man.
And it was a cold
day.
4 degrees or something like that. It was,
man, that right there would have, believe it would have won us the game. No, it would have tied the game.
The temperature in New England dipped to 2 degrees with a wind chill of 11 below.
Yeah. It would have tied the game.
You would have had a game-tying field goal
at least.
And a chance for a go-ahead touchdown.
Yeah, a chance to go for a go-ahead touchdown. And Mac threw it when only Drew can catch it, being 6'5", big catch radius. And Drew, it was just like, it hit his hands and it hit the ground.
That was a popular choice on our text line,
man,
by the way.
Drew went over to the sideline, and I mean, there was nothing anybody can do. You just had to let him live in it for the moment, because there was nothing we could say to make him feel any better. That play ultimately, because that was the Tuck Rule game. The next game was the Tuck Rule game versus the Oakland Raiders in New England. So there you go. There would not have been a Tuck Rule game.
The butterfly effect.
Had we won that game. So those are the two plays that I look back, I would have loved to have a do-over, because I believe that if those two plays go the other way, you might be looking at a team that would have won 2 Super Bowls or have been to 3 Super Bowls in a span of 3-4 years.
Yeah, the Patriots went on and won it. That was the year that they beat the Panthers, and that was a great Super Bowl.
Yeah, that was really good.
But
Super Bowl.
I just felt watching that Patriots game, as brutal as the weather was, I thought that was one of the more evenly played games. It was such an even
back
game.
and forth,
and either team could have won it. You also heard those weird rumors that they had a way of warming up the football or something. There's always Patriots stuff, right?
They probably did.
Yeah.
Knowing them.
It was the coldest game in the Titans' tenure in Tennessee or Houston
Yes.
at the time, and I imagine it still stands.
Yeah, those are the two plays that sticks out. I can go for a third one.
Well, why don't you hold that
Yeah.
thought?
Well, the only reason I chose the block field goal touchdown over the Ray Lewis interception is because it would have changed the whole rest of the way the game
You're right
went.
about
so
that. You're right.
I don't know if they would have had to. I don't know how it would have gone. It just seemed like the Ravens would never have scored.
They only scored one touchdown from the offense.
And it was a fluke play to Shannon
Sharp.
Sharp.
It was
got it down to the 1 yard line. Yeah.
By the way, Logan says the Tuck rule came before.
Oh, was it before that one?
I think
That
I
game
thought it
against
was
the
too. I
Patriots.
remember
Okay.
that might have been.
I believe it was the
It was
year,
the year
the year
before.
before, I want
Yeah.
to say.
The year before.
615-737-1025. Okay, you heard what Willie and Derek had to say.
One play.
You can have one on-field do-over, one play in Titans history. It cannot be Kevin Dyson falling 1 yard short in Super Bowl 34 because all of you would choose that, and then we wouldn't have any fun. So you can have one on-field do-over in Titans history, with the exception being Kevin Dyson in the Super Bowl. Which one play do you choose? We have a live reaction, and we'll get to it next. 615-737-1025. This fall, live at the Pinnacle at Nashville Yards, Tim McGraw will perform at Trintix's Rock the Cradle. This event is sure to be a great time, celebrating a great cause. Proceeds from the event will support newborns and moms at Ascension St. Thomas Midtown. Get your tickets now at rockthecradlenashville.org. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3. The Game, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan. You can have one on-field do-over in Titans history, but it cannot be Kevin Dyson falling 1 yard short in Super Bowl 34. Which play do you choose? 615-737-1025. A lot of reaction. Let's go to our friend Eric on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Eric, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead.
Hey, guys, both of these losses are bitter losses. The second one, and I'll get to it in a minute, has kind of a comedic twist, so that's why I'll kind of throw that one out there. But the first one is obviously the Cincinnati game here for the AFC divisional playoffs against the Bengals, where we had 9 sacks and wound up losing, where Tannehill had 3 interceptions, and all 3 I kind of felt like were forced. Just frustrating, especially on that last drive when I felt like we still had plenty of time, and the fact that I felt like Deontay Foreman especially should have somehow been more involved in the offense. He was definitely running the ball effectively, even though he had limited carries. Derrick Henry would come back off an injury, and we was force feeding the ball. But the fact that we weren't involved in Deontay Foreman, especially, he should have been involved in that last drive to where we could have possibly had the field goal to win the game. We throw the interception, and the Bengals, of course, kick the field goal to win the game, and they get that run to the Super Bowl. The one that kind of has a comedic twist that I wanted to throw out involves a second Baltimore game here, and I was at that game where the officials missed the fact that the clock ran down the 0-0. They snapped the ball. It should have been a delayed game, and I believe Derek Mason, you caught the ball, and y'all got the field goal to win the ball game. So that's kind of the one I'll throw the comedic twist on that. I mean, it's still a little loss, but I can still go back a little laugh. But the clocks were definitely at 0-0, and the ball was not snapped. And I was yelling. I said, hey, it's 0-0. Yeah, I wish we could have had a do-over on that one. But those are mine. Guys, y'all take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for the call, Eric.
Thank you, Eric.
I remember that play.
Yes.
There's always that discussion when the play clock hits 0 that there's supposed to be what they call a beat.
Yeah.
Right?
They give you that
They
extra,
give you that beat.
Yeah.
And I think in looking back on it, when I've looked at it, because at the time I felt just like Eric did. I thought, it's like, that's a delay game.
That was a touchdown.
Well, it was a big first down that led to the winning field goal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. I know what you mean. Yeah.
It was a big play that led to the go-ahead points in another game where there were so many what-ifs in the Titans-Ravens series there. But that particular game, too, the Titans' #1 seed, I think they had 3 fumbles in the red zone in that game. And then Chris Johnson got injured at halftime. There's so many what-ifs on how that game went south for the Titans that marred a really good season.
Here's an interesting one from Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports. He chimes in. He says, immediate gut reaction is tackle Mahomes in the open field before half in the 2020 AFC Championship.
Yeah, that was whew.
That was like a bad dream. I remember because it was just like, in your dream, sometimes you can't run very fast. You're like, where you have to get, and you just can't get there. That's what that play seemed like. I forget what the score was. The Titans were winning the game. They might have still had the lead at the half, but that got Kansas City going because you were one stop away from really feeling good about how that game was
Travis
unfolded.
Kelce hurt? He got hurt in that game.
No. That one,
was the
one you're
AFC
thinking
Championship.
about.
That was it. Okay.
Patrick Mahomes had a 27-yard run for a touchdown with 11 seconds left in the second quarter to give Kansas City a 21-17 lead at halftime.
Okay, so instead of the Titans going in with at least a tie of 17-all or the lead, you've lost all this. Wasn't it 17-7 at one point?
It was 17-7. Dennis Kelly with a 1-yard pass from Ryan Tannehill halfway through the second quarter. Titans led 17-7 roughly halfway through the second quarter. Kansas City scored 2 touchdowns late, a Tyreek Hill 20-yard pass from Mahomes, and then Mahomes run for 27 yards with 11 seconds
feel
left.
the momentum going away, and that was the play. You're like, oh.
And then they scored. They scored right away. Well, no, sorry. They scored right away. Well, no,
to start the second half?
Sorry, right away to start the fourth quarter. There was no score in the third quarter. That's my mistake.
Well, another one is, and I mentioned it to you guys, and maybe some of our texters have it, the run by Lamar Jackson in the, 2000?
That was 2020 because
2020 playoffs. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a playoff game where you weren't allowed to have the full stadium.
And that touchdown ultimately won them the game because at that point, I think it was 10-10, and then each team had a field goal after that, but it was that deciding touchdown right before the half that ultimately won them the game because they ended up winning 20-13.
That was the AFC wild card playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Lamar Jackson, a 48-yard run with 2:32 left in the second quarter, tied the game at 10.
Yeah, that was another game where you felt really good about how the game was unfolding. This is another Titans-Ravens. These are 3 games where you felt really good about their chances, and then just the Ravens found a way to wiggle out of there with a win.
Now, here's something interesting. This is not surprising. Many texters bring up the Ryan Tannehill interceptions in the Bengals playoff game. Well, there were 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So people texted in and said, I need you to pick one.
You got to pick one.
You got to pick one. We had a couple of texters who picked the first one, which wasn't that his first pass attempt of the game.
Yeah.
Very first play.
Yeah.
And then the third interception that set up the game-winning field.
And that was
for
a
the
tip.
Bengals.
That was a tip ball, right?
Yeah.
I thought the second one was actually the worst because they had a 1st and goal, and he tried to throw an out route to I think Foreman or something like that. But yeah, I thought the second one was the worst one because you're in 1st and goal situation.
I'll have to look
all
at
3 are bad.
Yes,
all 3 are
but
bad.
Which is the worst?
You pick.
It's another just nightmare game where you're thinking they could have overcome a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
But they just kept making more and more mistakes. And they still, even after the first 2 interceptions and the whole 2-point conversion thing and other gaffes, they worked their way back to tie the game. And they had the ball. And so the 3rd interception was critical. And even then, you're like, well, get it to overtime. And then they make the one pass to Jamar Chase.
I'm surprised people didn't say that.
That play is one you could go with.
Everybody in the building. And I can remember as the game was going on before the play, I'm like, anybody else can catch the ball except Jamar Chase. If you got to double team him, you got to triple team him, you do it.
And
they
gets
had
out of bounds.
High low on him, and he ran a corner route on 4th down, and he caught it for like 17 yards. I'm like, of all people in the building, everybody knew who it was going to, and y'all couldn't stop him?
According to NFL.com, Tannehill was picked off by Jesse Bates on the first play from scrimmage. Then he threw an interception on his first pass attempt of the second half after the ground game plowed the Titans inside the 10-yard line. Tannehill became just the second quarterback since 1991 to throw an interception on his first pass attempt of both halves of a playoff game, joining Jim Kelly in Super Bowl 26, if I have my Roman numerals correct. After Tennessee tied the game up late and had the ball with a chance to win, Tannehill was picked off again on a tipped pass. With 20 seconds left, the Bengals drove the ball into field goal range for a 52-yard Evan McPherson kick.
Right. So it was after the tip ball, 20 seconds left, and I don't have in front of me how many timeouts Cincinnati had.
I think they took a timeout.
But they've got the ball at the 47, and so you're thinking, all right, come on, still, as bad as that was, you've still got some momentum because they've come from behind. It's tied. Come up with a play. One pass, 19 yards out of bounds.
And everybody knew where the ball was
going. So they had a timeout because they called.
They had all 3 of theirs.
They did have all 3. You're right, because they used them. So they just sat on the ball and kicked the field goal. One play.
Everybody knew who the ball was going to.
JD from Brentwood said, before the Mahomes touchdown late in the second quarter, I recall the Titans running 3 straight times for a 3-and-out to give Casey the ball back. Once they punted back to the Chiefs, we knew what was about to happen. You were close, JD. They ran twice, Derrick Henry. Then Ryan Tannehill threw a pass to, I guess that would have been Dion Lewis for 6 yards. 4th, so it was a 3-and-out, but it was 2 runs and a pass. But then, then Mahomes scored the touchdown.
Yep.
As painful as all these are, I still think far and away the Del Greco blocked field goal for a return for a touchdown, that is the biggest dagger turnaround that you could possibly have on one play.
We had one person tweet in my Twitter or X or whatever the hell it's called, is not loading, but mentioned the Del Greco blocked field goal and said if that doesn't happen, the Titans win the Super Bowl.
I might even choose that over the Dyson 1 yard short play. I think I would.
Eldon English on Twitter said, Del Greco makes the field goal in the 2001 playoffs instead of the block return for a touchdown. He makes that specific one the Titans would have won
Yeah.
the Super Bowl that year.
And so it all would have been forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
And he had missed a couple more
He had
earlier
missed
in the
two.
game already.
Got a block and then
He
he missed
had one
one
block
and then a
and
block.
missed one.
Yeah.
He even missed one where he had a second chance
Yes.
and missed it again.
I
It's
look
just
back
a
on it
rough,
now
rough day.
and I laugh on it.
Yeah.
I also look at the. I didn't say the Super. Did I say the Super Bowl one? I said that
No,
one off
no,
air.
you said it off
Yeah,
air. This is a good one.
Here's a good one.
Because this has you wondering what do you call it? Quantum physics or something?
The butterfly effect?
Yeah,
The butterfly effect.
Yeah.
We don't know what would have happened
Mhm.
had this play happened because we never would have seen the 1 yard short kind of thing. It set
Exactly.
the stage for 1 yard short. But
Absolutely. It was the touchdown pass to Isaac Bruce. And I kid Javon just about every time I see him. If you wasn't so damn unblockable and good, you wouldn't have got to the quarterback, which would have made the catch much difficult because Denard was running step for step, and they had the safety over the top, step for step with Isaac Bruce.
And unfortunately, it was not Blaine Bishop.
And it
right?
wasn't Blaine
It was
Bishop.
Tony
It was
Dorsett.
Tony Dorsett. I mean, Anthony Dorsett, excuse me, Tony, but Anthony Dorsett.
Yeah.
And because Javon hit his arm, he didn't follow all the way through with the ball, but because Javon hit his arm, it was underthrown and no one saw it but Isaac Bruce. And Isaac Bruce comes back to the ball, and we've all famously seen it, come back, catches it, and streaks up the right side for a touchdown. If that play doesn't happen, we wouldn't need the 1 yard to ultimately put us in a position, because that wouldn't have won us the game. It would have just put us in a position to tie it.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. And so instead of driving to have to score a touchdown to tie it, in
Yes.
theory, if you could have gotten them to punt, you might have had the last drive and all
Exactly.
the momentum. It was 16
We had
to
all
nothing.
the momentum. Yes.
It was 16-0 at one point. They came back, Titans come back and tie it. So to have the ball with the last chance, it's a pretty good shot.
Yeah, it would have been a tie game. It would have been a tie game
yeah.
with us having the ball.
Mhm.
But because Javon's so damn good, he hits it. Kurt Warner's arm. Kurt Warner underthrows it. Isaac Bruce, being the Hall of Famer that he is, he sees the ball. And Blaine's not in the game because he's injured. Marcus Robinson's not playing, I don't think.
No, I don't think so.
And you have two inexperienced guys back there, Perry Phoenix and Anthony Dorsett, with Denard running stride for stride with him, and he doesn't see the ball, and they missed the tackle. They don't see anything.
What could have been?
What
could have been? 615-737-1025. We've got a couple more of your reactions that we will get to coming up next. I also want to discuss this ranking on The Athletic of college football's 100 best rivalries. Some interesting rankings, a lot of local flavor in it too. 615-73, or somewhat local, 615-737-1025. This week's Nashville's best deal is Mellow Mushroom. There's no pizza like Mellow Mushroom pizza, stone baked with fresh ingredients, next level imagination, and limitless options for customization. It's a higher order of pizza. You know and love Mellow Mushroom. Now get half off a $30 gift card while supplies last at theGameNashville.com/deals. The gift card is good for the downtown Broadway and Franklin locations. D. Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service, and we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan. I made the mistake during the break of pulling up Isaac Bruce's 73-yard touchdown pass in
Whew,
Super Bowl
man.
34. Derek and I did a frame-by-frame breakdown, and then he screamed in anguish.
PTSD, man. It's just like, but I don't blame nobody but myself, because I sat there and I actually watched frame by frame. Denard was
It wasn't therapeutic?
Great position. It wasn't therapeutic.
I
For
pulled
those
this a few
that
years
say-
ago.
Yeah, for those
I
that
said,
say
Derek, watch the game. It'll be therapeutic to watch it. You've never watched it? And Derek, about 30 minutes later, I started watching it. I stopped. It wasn't therapeutic.
Yeah,
He was
some
mad.
things can be therapeutic, but watching games like that, watching that Super Bowl game, that is definitely not therapeutic. And then I blame Blaine too for trying to hit. Who was it? Big Ernie Mills? Was it Ernie Mills or no? It wasn't Ernie Mills. The big
was
tight
it Torrey
end.
Holt?
No, it was the big
No.
tight end. He got put at. He hurt his neck, and he
Yeah,
he
that
was in hospital.
scary.
Yeah,
That
it was scary, real
Yeah,
scary.
They stopped the game.
Mhm.
He
Who
left.
was he trying to hit? Why am I forgetting his name? He lived here in Nashville too for a minute. He may still live. Ernie Hart. Is it Ernie Conwell? Conwell. I think it was Ernie Conwell.
We'll look it up.
Yeah.
But
He tried
it
to
was
big
right
hit
after
Ernie,
that
big
they
Ernie.
scored to make it 16-0.
Mm-hmm.
So you lose your all-pro safety and you go down 16-0. It looked
Yeah.
bleak.
There
But
was
that's what was great about
Ernie
that game.
Cromwell. That's who it was.
There
I
was
believe.
one play before we move on to these college football rivalry rankings by The Athletic. One play that did come up a couple of times on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, for the one Titans do-over, was the play where Derrick Henry broke his foot against the Colts during the 2021 season. One texter said, and I'm paraphrasing here because I can't find the text, that had Henry not injured himself on that play and missed the rest of the regular season, if I recall correctly, there was some initial reporting that the injury was season ending. He did return for the Bengals game, had 20 rushing attempts for 62 yards. But the texter argued that if Derrick Henry did not break his foot on that play, he's playing, he's hitting his stride going into the playoffs. He's more impactful in the game against the Bengals. Ryan Tannehill doesn't have to throw the ball as much, therefore not as many interceptions. So what do you think about that play and the rationale for that play?
Oh, man. I mean, I guess you can, in theory, say that, if he doesn't break his foot, I believe he goes on and breaks the record, the rushing record for the season. I think that does happen. The Titans were already the number one seed, so it's not like they could have been even more of a number one seed. They were already the number one seed. So maybe that could have been, because we all know Derrick Henry gets stronger as the season goes, and you got to prepare for him different when he's not coming back off an injury. So, yeah. I mean, I don't know how high I would have that play ranked necessarily, but I would say, yeah.
Speaking of,
the only thing that's murky about that to me, if I remember correctly, it's hard to know what play he broke it because he kept playing. He played the rest of that game and he didn't do anything. And it was a great game, very exciting, but he was hobbling. You could tell he was hurting. And then, of course, the next day, you get the news.
Mm-hmm.
They won that game in pretty dramatic fashion. So I don't know if you could narrow it down to one play. And you could also maybe argue again in the quantum physics, what if he didn't break it then, it was like a stress-related thing. Eventually it may have gone.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that is a great what if in general. I just don't know if you can boil it down to this subject in the one play.
Speaking of rankings, Scott Docterman, who was on Robbie and Rex Show this morning from The Athletic, he did a massive undertaking, ranking college football's 100 best rivalries. And I thought his process was interesting because in a separate post, he detailed the 11 principles and questions that he asked himself to gauge these rivalries. And I'll quickly run through them. Data. What do the numbers say? How many times have they met as ranked opponents? What is the win-loss disparity? Prominence. Does this rivalry involve high-profile or power conference programs? Relevance. Does it matter to their conference or to college football if these teams play each year? Trajectory. Is the series growing or retracting in importance? Frequency. Is this an annual series? Proximity. Are these teams in-state or border rivals? Competitiveness. Is this a series that ebbs and flows, or is it a hammer versus a nail? Moments. Where there are games or plays that stand out decades later? Intensity. Is this a series both fan bases circle when the schedule comes out? Longevity. How many times have they competed against one another? And history. Are these teams longtime members of the same conference? So those were the 11 principles that Scott Docterman used to make this list. So the number one overall rivalry in college football, according to Scott Docterman, Michigan and Ohio State at number one. Here's the complete top 10 from 1 to 10. Michigan, Ohio State, Auburn and Alabama, Oklahoma and Texas, Army and Navy, USC and Notre Dame, Nebraska and Oklahoma, Miami and Florida State, Ohio State and Penn State, Florida and Florida State, and Minnesota and Wisconsin at number 10.
I think I got a beef.
One texter, Matthew, says Tennessee, Bama being ranked number 11, which is true, is crazy enough. But being below Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Nebraska, Oklahoma is ludicrous. This is from Matthew in Nashville. You got a beef? Where's the beef?
The beef for me, I think, is a little bit, we're living in the past with USC Notre Dame, aren't we? Like, when's the last time? Like, there just haven't been, there's been some good flickers, but year in and year out, I think that's lost what it had in the 60s and the 70s. And then, Notre Dame took a little dip, and there's both programs have had a dip. It's a great one, but that one's a little high for me.
Okay, so here is Docterman's
I know
reasoning.
there's going to be some alum, like Jeff Fisher is going to call, or Pete Weber is going to call. They're going to be like, wait a minute. What are you talking about?
Here is the reasoning from Docterman about why he put USC and Notre Dame at number 5. They first met in 1926. They've met 95 times. He writes, USC Notre Dame might seem like an unnatural rivalry, but that's the biggest reason why it's listed in the top 5. It's a cross-country trip with no conference allegiance, yet these renowned programs have battled almost yearly for a century. In 13 games, either the Irish 8 or Trojans 5 were ranked number 1. The teams have battled 35 times while ranked in the AP poll and faced off 18 times as top 10 foes. The most prominent matchup took place in 1988 when top-ranked Notre Dame beat second-ranked USC en route to the national title.
Boy, USC was ranked second. I don't remember them. Was that Rodney Peete? I remember that was a great run for Notre Dame, but the Notre Dame-Miami game, that was the signature game that year. I don't remember the Notre Dame.
The biggest
USC
game, 2005. Top-ranked USC had won 27 consecutive games, including the last 2 national titles, and had beaten number 9 Notre Dame 3 consecutive years by 31 points. Game of the century, right?
That's a good game.
Matt Leinart attempted to sneak from the Notre Dame 1-yard line and was stood up short of the goal. Reggie Bush shoved Leinart from behind and into the end zone.
So also known as the Bush push.
Yeah.
The precursor to.
So when was the last time both teams were ranked in the top 10 and they played?
So let's see here. It says, I don't know when was the last time. It says in 13 games, either the Irish 8 or Trojans 5 were ranked number 1. The teams have battled 35 times while ranked in the AP poll, and 18 times as top 10 foes.
I guess if you're really doing the whole history of college football, it's hard to argue. But it's just, I think, in more of a modern audience,
I don't look at it as a
you're
rivalry.
probably not going to think of that as much. But if no question, if you go through the decades and you're counting the 50s, 60s, 70s as much as you're doing now, I have to give it to you.
Let's give Derek Mason a little love here. Here are the times when Michigan State ends up on the list. And you tell me if these rivalries are properly ranked with the Spartans. Starting at the top. The first appearance for Michigan State, number 65, Michigan State, Penn State.
No.
Number 40.
Because you know why?
Why
because Penn State didn't come into the Big Ten until 90, what was it? 93, like 94? Right, it might have been 94 because I got in college in 93. So it might have been 94, 95. They got into the Big Ten. I don't see that as.
That was number 65 on the list of 100.
Yeah. If you're going to rank, you need to rank the Michigan State game higher than that.
Well, Michigan State Notre Dame is 45. out
I
of
don't-
100. Michigan and Michigan State is number 16.
They had
the
that
16th
classic-
best rivalry.
They had
is
that cla-
Michigan and Michigan
Yeah,
State.
so 16, they need to, that's higher. That Michigan State Notre Dame, they always go back to that the one, what was it? Was it the 13-13 game, something like that? Tie game?
10-10
yeah,
tie.
10-10
Yeah,
tie.
yeah.
They
That's
always go
considered one
back
of the
to
great
that
games.
game. Yeah, one of the greatest games ever.
And like for more of a modern fan, you're like a 10-10 game
Yeah,
is
exactly.
the greatest game. But that I remember growing up
In
they always used to talk about that.
1966.
Yeah.
In 1966. Doctorman writes, Michigan State and Notre Dame sit about 145 miles from one another, and that proximity made this a series of convenience. But their battles in the 50s and 60s and the constant swirl of upsets became legendary.
Yeah.
From 1948 through 2013, this became an annual series save for 4 seasons. The teams never played at a neutral site, and their game served as an early season barometer. The teams have 14 ranked matchups, with the Spartans holding an 8-5-1 lead. 4 of those games qualified as upsets.
It makes you appreciate the Alabama, Auburn,
Yeah.
and Michigan, Ohio State.
Because of the longevity.
Jimmy, because pick a year. You can just pick a year at random, and it's
a good game.
sustained itself
Yeah.
for all these decades, both of those. What's number 3 behind those two?
Let's take a look. Number 3, Oklahoma and Texas, the Red River,
the Red
Red
River.
River
Yeah. I mean, it's
rivalry.
pretty
Say that
constant.
10 times
Yeah.
Pretty
fast.
constant.
Is Army Navy up there?
Army Navy is 4.
Army Navy.
Okay,
yeah.
4.
No
Army
doubt.
Navy is 4. So as Matthew in Nashville said, and I believe Robbie had issue with this as well. So Alabama, Tennessee. By the way, Tennessee appears on this list 5 times.
Is Alabama, Tennessee ahead of Tennessee, Florida?
Yes.
How do Vol fans feel about that? I don't know.
Here's where Tennessee.
Yeah,
here's
I
where
think just the tradition of the, because for a long time Florida and Tennessee didn't even play each other every year, but Alabama, Tennessee have
Yeah,
always
always
played
played.
each other.
Here's
Yeah.
where Tennessee falls on this list. Again, 5 times. Hey, Tennessee and Vanderbilt, number 80 on the list.
I was gonna say, better have my Commodores in there.
We'll
somewhere.
touch on that more in depth in a minute. Tennessee and Vanderbilt, number 80. Tennessee and Kentucky, number 75. Tennessee and Georgia, number 53. Tennessee and Florida, number 36. Tennessee and Alabama, number 11.
Tennessee and Florida is 36. Wow.
Because it's
How
a
do
more
you feel
recent-
about that?
It's a
Vol
more
fans?
recent.
Vol
It's a more
fans?
recent thing.
You think so? Because of that?
They used to not. First of all, they only used to play 7 conference games for a long time, which was really weird. And I don't know why they didn't play every year. But then when they got into this, when they went to divisions in the early 90s, that's when they started playing
Playing
every
more.
year. And they were both really, really powerful teams.
Doctorman writes, Tennessee and Florida barely resonated for either fan base until they were
Oh,
forced
wow.
to play one
Well,
another
okay.
every year in the
Yeah.
SEC
Okay.
East.
Okay.
Once they did, the series sizzled and became the SEC's most competitive rivalry in the 1990s. It doesn't measure up when compared alongside these teams' historical feuds, but it's on the map. From 1916 through 1989, they played only 19 times. Since then, they have played 35 consecutive years, and both teams were ranked in the AP poll in 22.
So because now that, you have, where does the Texas and Oklahoma?
That was in the top 5.
That was in the top 5. Okay.
That was number 3.
That was number
right?
3.
Number 3. Okay.
Yes, number 3. Let's take a quick look back up to number 80 for a moment. Let's visit Tennessee and Vanderbilt.
Oh, wow.
What to know? The
Oh,
in-state.
but hold on. Before you
Yes.
read that, isn't a rivalry when, it's not lopsided in victory?
Well, hold that thought.
Hold on, D-Base. Hold on.
The in-state aspect.
Let's just look at the last few years. We got
You're right.
We got some
you're
dubs
right,
in
you're
there.
Hold on.
Got
You're
some
right.
dubs
I'll
in there.
give you that. I'll give you that.
Now, if you had said that when I was in school, I'd be like, yeah, he's got a point. He's kind of got a point.
Doctorman writes, quote, the in-state aspect and total number of games put this series in the top 80.
Yeah.
But if both teams weren't located in Tennessee, it may not crack the top 100. From 1965 to 2004, Tennessee was 37-2-1.
Oh, wow.
The series has become more competitive in recent years, with
Okay.
Vandy winning 5 of 13 to give it some
There
more
we go.
flavor.
Yeah. At one point, it was
37-2-1.
5 of 7, I think.
Yeah.
They had a run there where Tennessee hit a dip. Vanderbilt was good. They had the
They have met 118 times.
right. I think that's the thing about it. What was the first meeting? It was in
October 21st, 1892.
Like there's some sons of Civil War veterans playing in that game.
There were horses pulling up to the stadium.
In true rivalry fashion, the teams can't agree on the total number of games.
Okay.
Vandy lists 119, while Tennessee has 118. It all stems from Vanderbilt counting a 76-0 win against Tennessee in 1918, while the Vols suspended varsity football in 1917-18 during World War I and fielded 2 unofficial
y'all
teams.
bad, Vandy. Vandy, y'all bad.
They're like, that's the B team.
Y'all bad.
That wasn't our real
Yes, y'all
Vandy
bad.
won 18
Vanderbilt's like, I don't care. They were wearing orange. It said Tennessee.
You stepped on the
we
field.
played because we won.
Vandy won 18 of the first 22 games, which also included 2 ties. The Vols have compiled a 79-14-2 mark since 1928, separated by 180 miles along I-40 from Knoxville to Nashville. The teams have played 65 times on the season's final weekend. And he includes the biggest game. Willie, what is the biggest game, according to Scott Docterman, in Tennessee Vanderbilt history?
Ooh, the biggest game. You got to go back.
Well, of course, it was when Vanderbilt beat Tennessee to keep Tennessee out of a bowl game.
Both clinched bowl bids by their 1982 finale, but Vanderbilt was seeking its first home win against Tennessee since 1964. Commodores quarterback Whit Taylor was brilliant in passing for 391 yards and engineering a 28-21 win.
I'm going to look for that game tonight. I'm going to look for that game.
Vanderbilt fans stormed the field and tore down the goalpost. I don't think they brought it to the river, though. The next time Vandy beat Tennessee at home was in 2012, 30 years later.
And I was there.
Yeah.
82 was before I discovered Vanderbilt. So I don't remember that game, but everybody talks
so
about
you don't claim them then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think recently the 2 great wins was the game where they knocked Alvin Kamara out of bounds prior on 4th down. He kind of went out of bounds, shy of the marker. That was a pretty good Tennessee team, not a great one, but a good one. And that was a big win, probably Derek Mason's greatest win. And then there was another great Derek Mason moment where both teams needed a win to get to a bowl game. And Vanderbilt got to a bowl game and knocked Tennessee out in the process. That was a Jeremy Pruitt game. I know Tennessee fans tried to erase all memories of Jeremy Pruitt.
Who?
That was a fun Saturday.
615-737-1025. Scott Docterman of The Athletic. By the way, he joined Robbie and Rex Road this morning. So if you want to hear him explain it, be sure to listen to that interview wherever you listen to your podcast. He has a list ranking the 100 greatest rivalries in college football. Tell me your favorite rivalry. I'll see where it is on the list. 615-737-1025. Hey, tomorrow afternoon, come out to Brewhouse South in Cool Springs and meet Nashville native and 2-time IndyCar champion Joseph Newgarden from 5:30 to 7 p.m. Also, Big Joe Dubin will be on site for a special broadcast of Chasing Checkers from 6 to 7. So get out to Brewhouse South tomorrow and meet Joseph Newgarden and get signed up to win tickets to the Borchetta Bourbon Music City Grand Prix. Hey, tune in to ESPN 94.9 The Fan today as the Nashville Sounds take on the Durham Bulls. Pregame begins at 5:20 and the first pitch is at 5:35. Coverage is also available on the Game Nashville app and at theGameNashville.com. Sounds Baseball on ESPN 94.9 The Fan is presented by Twin Peaks and Family Leisure. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you talking Scott Docterman's ranking at The Athletic of the 100 best rivalries in college football. One texter mentioned MTSU in Western Kentucky, also known as 100 Miles of Hate. Well, guess what,
Darn right.
texter? Middle Tennessee and Western Kentucky did make the list at number 99.
We'll take it.
As Scott Docterman writes,
100 Miles of Hate.
the 100 Miles of Hate. Their first meeting came in 1914. They have met 74 times. As Scott Docterman notes, Western Kentucky and MTSU has lasted through 3 conferences and several years of independent status to become Conference USA's most played series. The teams consider one another their top rival, with the series unofficially known as, of course, 100 Miles of Hate. The teams were longtime members of the Ohio Valley Conference and moved to FBS at different times, MTSU in 1999, Western Kentucky in 2007. They resumed their series in 2007 and have played every year but 2013 4 times. From 2010 through 2017, the games went into overtime, and twice they became triple overtime thrillers. That's a big part of a rivalry. Overtime
What is
games.
because I didn't hear you. Auburn, Georgia rank. That has to be a top 5, 10.
Auburn, Georgia.
Yeah.
Let's take a look. 17.
17.
17.
Deep South oldest rivalry.
Michigan and Michigan State, 16.
Yes. I'm trying to Florida, Georgia. What is that ranking?
Florida, Georgia.
That's got to be top 20.
Let's see. Florida, Georgia. Georgia, I believe, was on this list 7 times.
Oh, wow.
Which was the most. Okay, hold on. All right, hold on. There's a lot of searching I'm having. Georgia and Florida was number 12.
Okay.
Is that what is it called? The biggest cocktail party? The world's largest?
The
world's largest outdoor.
Outdoor.
It has to be
My bad,
outdoor.
my bad.
It's not indoors. They
No.
can't be
Correct.
indoors.
That's right.
Okay.
Texas A&M.
I think it encompasses most indoor cocktail parties that you'd have to check, but you'd be hard pressed to find a bigger one than that.
Texas and Texas A&M. Let's see. I'm still looking for it. Come on. Texas and Arkansas. All right. Texas and Texas A&M is 15th on the list.
Okay. I'm only really trying to look for SEC schools.
LSU, Alabama.
Yeah.
LSU, Alabama. I think that was I think that was 13th on the list. 13th.
Which one of the?
The Egg Bowl. What was the Egg Bowl?
yeah.
Oh,
That was in the
Mississippi-
20s.
was in the 20s.
One texter was quite upset.
That it was in the 20s.
Yes.
Hmm.
One texter says, "How is Harvard and Yale number 20?"
Because that is called the game.
Yes.
I have been to a Harvard Yale game in the Harvard Bowl.
It's not a game. It's the
the
game.
That's right.
Docterman writes, U.S. presidents have coached in and attended the game, and some of the nation's most impactful leaders have donned Harvard jerseys and Yale helmets. Harvard-Yale doesn't determine a national champion, but its legacy is so tethered to college football history that to extract it would be to remove the entire sport from its existence.
My roommate for the Medicine Hat Blue Jays in 1993, we had a fun summer at Medicine Hat, and I went and visited him for the Harvard-Yale the game that fall. I had never been to it before. He was a 2-sport guy like I was at Harvard. He played some football at Harvard. And I can tell you that there were very few sober people in the Harvard Bowl.
That doesn't
day.
surprise me.
Before, during, and after the game.
Oh.
And I was one of them. I waited till after the game.
You joined.
I
in
enjoyed the game while it was
festivities.
going on. I kind of just flew in and it was like a noon start.
Uh-huh.
But it was good stuff.
In 1968, Yale entered the game on a 16-game winning streak, and both teams were 8-0. The Bulldogs led Harvard 29-13 midway through the fourth quarter before the Crimson cut its deficit to 8 points with a touchdown and 2-pointer with 42 seconds left. Harvard recovered the onside kick and scored a touchdown and a 2-pointer with no time left for the tie. The headline in the Crimson student paper said it all. Harvard beats Yale 29-29.
Yeah.
Nothing like
That's
some
a famous
eggheads.
one. That's a famous one. The one I went to was not as good.
Nothing like some eggheads.
Stanford, California.
Stanford
considered
Cal.
big
That's got to be
game.
in there, right?
Let's take a look.
They'd have had the infamous.
Well, I mean, that alone.
Yes, that alone should.
The band is on
yeah.
the field. The band is on the field.
That is number 29.
Okay. I mean, it must have moved up at least
man.
10 spots
After
because
that
of that
one,
game.
yes.
If I recall correctly, it was a trombone player
Yeah.
who was
That's who got
who was
smoked.
trampled.
Yeah.
And as a former trombone player myself,
Oh, man.
Hey, we got to care for trombone players as
yes.
well.
There are so many great documentary type things on that play where they talk about some of the illegal blocks that may or may not have
my
occurred.
Goodness.
Some laterals look like the guy's down and still got the lateral off. And all the stories from all the perspectives, including the trombone player who got smashed at the end.
Got ran through.
He is the funniest guy to listen to talk about it because he tells great stories about it.
How do you feel about Michigan and Michigan State, Derek Mason, being 16th on this list? The first meeting in 1898.
Hey, it's 16. I think we could have been a little bit higher, but I'll take 16. I think it's always a heated rivalry, at least from a state standpoint.
Every in-state rivalry has passion and intensity, but this one often boils over the top.
Yeah, we don't like it.
It's probably the most vicious in-state rivalry with pregame and postgame altercations between players, some of which have led to player arrests.
Bro,
It's also a competitive series involving two of the Big Ten's better programs, which is why that ranks most in-state rivalry.
We do not like them. Like the coaches don't like them. Like if you have played for the Michigan State Spartans, you hate everything, and I mean everything about about Michigan. Hate everything about them. Okay, everything. Scum University.
Unpredictability elevates Michigan State into one of the nation's best. The Spartans have 11 wins against the Wolverines when they're ranked in the top 7, including an upset of number 1 Michigan in 1990. Yeah. And despite Michigan's overall edge in the series, Michigan State is 11-7-1 when both teams are ranked. Michigan running back Mike Hart called Spartans little brother in 2007.
Whooped up on
and the slight fueled Michigan State and coach Mark D'Antonio for the next decade. The Spartans then won 8 of the next 10.
Yeah, whooping them up.
What do you think the biggest game, according to Scott Docterman, in Michigan State
the biggest game was the block punt.
Trouble with the snap?
The block punt, because Michigan, the only thing they had to do was the only thing they had to do was get the punt off. And they win the game. That's all they had to do. Get the punt off because it wasn't enough seconds left to actually get anything. All they had to do was get rid of the punt.
Michigan, biggest game, about a dozen games could qualify, but none rates as high as their 2015 encounter.
Yep.
Number 12 Michigan led number 7 Michigan State 23-21 with 10 seconds left.
Mm-hmm.
A bobbled snap on a punt led to a midair scoop by Michigan State's Jalen Watts Jackson, who returned the fumble for a touchdown with no time remaining. The victory led the Spartans to the Big Ten title and a playoff berth.
Yep, we ended up getting beat down by Alabama. I went to that game too. My son wanted to leave early. He was like, Dad, they're losing. He was mad they were getting beat down. I was like, nope, we got to stay the whole game, bro.
They had that was in Dallas.
Yeah, it was in Dallas.
The Predators were playing the Stars.
I remember.
Same night.
I remember that. I was there.
And the Stars,
not at the game, but in Dallas.
Stars destroyed the Predators. So there were a lot of people in a bad mood. For New Year's Eve in Dallas.
Misery loves company.
Yeah, exactly. There are a lot of Spartan fans coming back moping.
Exactly.
We were coming back moping. We're like, oh, man, y'all lost it.
Oh, man. So, yeah, that had to be.
If I recall correctly, the Predators and Michigan State were staying at the same hotel.
Yeah, the Omni. Yeah. We were all together. It was misery loves company. Absolutely.
I do remember.
We drank our sorrows.
Well, Derek, maybe you can give us.
I was staying in the same hotel.
We were all there. We didn't even know.
It's huge.
It's a big hotel.
Yes.
It is a big hotel. So a lot of people, I know Robbie and Joe talked about this morning. Alabama, Tennessee being number 11, being knocked out of the top 10 by Minnesota and Wisconsin. As a Big Ten alum, put into context the importance of the Minnesota-Wisconsin rivalry.
You got to understand, I didn't watch much of that rivalry until I was in the NFL and watching those teams play. So it's important to them. But when I think of rivalries, I don't really, that's not the first thing that come to mind.
Scott,
sorry. No, I'm saying that particular game. It just does. It's not one of the first things that come to mind.
Scott Docterman writes, perhaps no other border feud contains the ecstasy of victory and misery and defeat Like Minnesota, Wisconsin, they are codependent. That's a good word. Big Ten rivals in every sense of the word.
That's because they can see one another from state to state, basically.
While the Badgers have been more successful the last 3 decades, the result of this game impacts how every season is remembered for both teams. They have played each other 134 times.
So I guess if you're asking a Minnesotan,
A Minnesotan,
or a West,
is it a Wisconsinite? A Wisconsinite?
That sounds right.
So if you ask those two fan bases, they would probably say yes. But I think if you go outside of that, it's like, huh? Like, why? Because y'all live, like, I can see your city, you can see mine from across. What is that? Lake, it's not Lake Michigan. Oh gosh, I forget what lake it is.
One texter was mad that the Egg Bowl was ranked so low. He said it was BS.
No?
The Egg Bowl is number 23. Ole Miss,
I feel like
Mississippi
this is
State.
the appropriate time also to insert. We're talking about these bitter rivalries and you hate the other team. We should point out that Chris Sanders did pick against his alma mater
Wow.
in the Michigan
And
Ohio
we will
State
be
game.
sure to remind him of that
Yes.
Yeah.
as soon as Silly Underdog Pick
Yes.
starts up.
Yes. This fall.
This
it
fall.
will come back up. And he could have won the title without that win.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And he won. He won that game. I still think he's got to feel a little bit dirty for doing that.
What I
Well,
heard,
he doesn't.
What
He
I
doesn't.
heard
He
is
doesn't.
that an Ohio State
doesn't.
representative showed up at his door the next day and said, "Chris, your diploma, please." And the representative pulled out a lighter and burned his diploma
I
right in
would've.
front of his face.
After we told him that's what they were going to do anyway. It was going to revoke all of his privileges, even coming into the state of Ohio. They were going to take away his Buckeyes on his helmet.
No,
Right.
no, not as Buckeyes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. If
They
you
can't
pick
do
against
that.
you pick against your team, that's enough. But then you pick against them when they're playing Michigan.
The best rivalry.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. They erased your name off of everything.
There was a list that accompanied this story, ranking the top rivalry names, like the
Okay.
Egg Bowl
Mhm.
or the Holy War or the Iron Bowl. Number 1 on the list, the Brawl of the Wild, Montana versus Montana State.
The Brawl of the Wild.
I mean, that's a
clever. I've
pretty
never
cool
heard that.
name.
I've never heard
There
that.
are some good ones on here that I had never heard of. For example, David James, UAB versus Memphis is known as the
I totally forgot.
Battle for the Bones.
Oh yes,
The Battle
Yes, I
of the
forgot
Bones?
The
Oh,
battle
that's what it's
for the
called.
bones.
Oh.
I
What kind of
totally
bones
forgot.
is it?
Well, this also technically is named because of its trophy, a bronze rack of ribs.
Mhm. Yep. We love our ribs
I
out there.
was thinking about ribs. I was like, surely that's
A
not it. But
bronze
A
it is.
bronze rack of ribs.
A bronze rack of ribs. Like, wow. Okay. Okay.
Here's the top 10 from 10 to 1. The Soul Bowl, Jackson State versus Alcorn State, Mississippi's
Okay.
2 largest HBCUs. The biggest little game in America, Amherst versus Williams. Farmageddon, Kansas State versus Iowa State.
Farmageddon.
Deeper than hate, Appalachian State versus Georgia Southern.
Okay.
The world's largest outdoor cocktail
Right,
party,
right.
Florida versus Georgia. The Iron Bowl, Alabama versus Auburn. The Holy War, BYU versus Utah. Battle for the Bones, UAB versus Memphis. Bedlam, Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State. And Brawl of the Wild, Montana versus
There you
Montana
go.
State.
Where is BYU Utah ranked? Because I just remember
on the rivalry list.
on the
Yeah.
rivalry, because I can remember last year stumbling upon. I just was flipping around. I got back from a hockey game, and I'm like, okay, what games are on? That game was on. It was a great game. As we know, BYU had a really good season. They were in it.
28.
28.
The Holy
I
War.
was impressed about the atmosphere in that game. The red and the blue. There's something that was a cool atmosphere.
How about Cincinnati, Miami, Ohio? Battle for the Bell.
I want to see this bronze rack of ribs. Personally,
What does it look
Is it a
like?
trophy?
it's a trophy,
Oh wow.
allegedly.
Supposedly. Why there are 2 battles for the Bell.
I do love this one.
Cincinnati or Miami, Ohio, and Marshall in Ohio.
I love this one. Clean
Yeah,
old
really?
fashioned hate. Georgia versus Georgia Tech.
Hmm.
I like that one. The Seafaring Scuffle. The U.S. Merchant Marine versus SUNY Maritime. The Coal Bowl. Indiana of Pennsylvania versus California of
Battle of the
Pennsylvania.
Iron Skillet. Where's that one ranked? SMU, TCU.
Battle of the Iron Skillet.
I need to see that trophy.
I love this one. The real HU, Howard versus Hampton. I like that one.
I
But
think Farmageddon still gets the award for me.
some honorable mentions quickly. The Beehive Bowl, Weber State versus Southern Utah.
Mhm.
Battle of the Brothers, Utah versus Utah State. The Old Mountain Feud, Appalachia State versus Marshall.
Utah versus Utah State is Battle of the Brothers.
The Battle of the
Yeah,
Brothers.
yes.
Is it because there are a lot of brothers? Because
Could be.
we know about, they multiply out there. The Mormons.
And with that,
Not saying anything.
615-737-1025.
Probably a lot of actual brothers.
Our phone and text lines
Yeah,
are
I'm
driven by
deciding
Wilson
to go
County.
here, you go there.
Okay. Coming up next, Willie alluded to it when we were talking to Tim Hasselbeck, but he is going to introduce something we're going to do later this week, and we want you to get involved. So coming up next, as we wrap up the show, Willie will introduce the assignment. It's not really
It's
an assignment. It's optional.
No, I'm gonna make it
Extra credit.
mandatory. Mandatory.
Oh, okay. Professor Mason.
Yeah,
That's the-
mandatory.
Okay.
Optional, mandatory. Mandatory, optional.
We'll figure
Yeah,
that
we'll
out
work
during the
with it.
break.
Yeah.
615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Instant approvals, low rates, no hard credit pull up front. These are the things that make Loan Pronto's rapid equity loan program so efficient and so effective at getting you to a better place financially for your financial needs. You have a home improvement project maybe on deck. Maybe you've got some bills to pay, but let's just take the home improvement. You want to renovate your kitchen. You want to upgrade the TV watching area in your room, the hangout room for football season, but you need some funds. Use your home's equity. It's yours. Get cash out quickly and get moving on these projects. Make your home even more valuable. Call Loan Pronto for a free instant home appraisal. See how much cash you can get today, and you'll get it efficiently and effectively through Loan Pronto. They're A+ rated by the BBB. They have nearly 2,500 5-star Google reviews. 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781 on approved credit. NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
D. Mace Vingan and Donick 1025, 1063 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Jared Stillman still on vacation, so you will be graced by the presence of Jake Lyman and Connor Newt starting at 2 o'clock. Parker Kelly, too. I enjoyed the show
Don't
yesterday.
leave Parker out.
What?
Don't leave Parker out.
Of course not. I would
Absolutely.
never leave Parker out.
There we go.
I'm sure both of them stayed up late playing college football 26.
It's out.
The
It just came out.
If you paid like $100, it's
Which
out
they
now,
probably did.
which is an insane amount of money
But
to
they
pay for a
probably
video
did
game.
it. Yeah, they probably did it. Because if they're like my son, yeah, they yeah. I'll tell you for sure. Yep, they got it.
I feel like the most I've ever paid for a video game is like maybe $60, 50, $60.
Really,
Thereabout.
remember when they were like $20? Like
Oh,
the old
yeah.
school, yeah. They were like $20. The good games, new games that come out. Yeah. Nope. No longer.
Yes, if you pre-ordered it and paid for a certain version, and Connor and Jake can correct me, I believe it was $100 to access it early. Money well spent, I suppose. Matthew in Nashville says it's not D1, but Carson Newman versus is it Tusculum? Tusculum should be an honorable mention on that rivalry list. The second oldest rivalry in Tennessee, with their first meeting occurring in 1904. They can't stand each other. In fact, one year, both teams each snuck onto the other's campus in the middle of the night, one night trashing the field and spray painting curse words in a certain body part all over the field and buildings.
Oh, wow.
Not going to say which male body part. Y'all can use your imagination.
Man, we used to have to, they used to make students guard the Spartan statue before the Michigan game. Somebody would be out there that whole week. Somebody would be tasked to guard that statue day and night. Day and night.
We at American, we didn't really have any fierce rivalries.
No,
y'all didn't.
No. American Holy Cross, American Lehigh, American Lafayette.
Everything had American in it first.
Yes.
Okay.
No fierce rivalries.
No,
in
no.
the Patriot League, except for Lafayette and Lehigh. That is a storied rivalry that goes back a long way. But American, we didn't really have any storied rivalries.
Y'all didn't get hyped for a game? Like, did y'all consider somebody a rival? Not necessarily that everybody else
who would
did.
be the biggest rival?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
What? You have to think about it?
Come on,
Well,
Adam.
it wasn't like American was a top flight athletic program in anything.
Neither is MTSU, but they still.
Oh, wow.
I'll do that
Shots fired.
research. I'll do that research.
Shots fired at my.
I
Shout out
personally,
MTSU.
I personally didn't like Holy Cross, the basketball team, because there was one guy on that team who had a very punchable face, whose name I can't remember. I was like, man, if I had the nerve, I'd smack that guy.
So that was your rival. There
Yes,
you go.
the one big guy on Holy Cross
there you
back in
go.
2007. But we do have an assignment. Willie says it's optional. Derek says it's optional but mandatory.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a free country.
It-
We
it-
can't go check.
It does
everybody.
remind me
Yeah.
of when I was in high school, as I mentioned when we were talking about the band is on the field. I played trombone in high school. Shocker for some of you, I'm sure. Quite good at it too, by the way. First chair all city.
Nice.
Not going to lie. Nothing to brag about. Anyway, I was in marching band my freshman year in high school because it was required to be in the top band at my high school. You had to participate in marching band. But that changed from 9th grade to 10th grade. It went from required to highly recommended. So I walked into my band instructor's office, Mr. Wills. And here's the one thing I remember about Mr. Wills. Man needed to shave because he had chest hair coming out of the collar of his t-shirt.
Oh, that's tough.
And I said,
A lot
Mr.
of taco
Wills,
meat.
I said, Mr. Wills, if it's highly recommended, I'm not doing it. And he didn't love that.
Yeah.
But it's not required,
Mhm.
this assignment,
Yeah.
but I would say it's highly recommended. So Willie, why
And
don't you
It's
introduce
a fun
it?
assignment.
If it's
Yes.
if you're into fun,
Yeah, it's
if
a
you're
fun
into fun,
assignment.
you'll
If
do
you
it.
guys love fun,
Yeah, if you like fun,
listen up.
if you're a football guru, football enthusiast,
Mhm.
and we're all in the same place, right? It's July. We've got a few weeks before training camp starts back up, and then we've got SEC media days coming. Right now, we're in a little bit of a desert for
Mhm.
football content. So we thought, let's have some fun, and let's just see how the game of football over the last 40 years at the NFL level has changed or not changed. And so I picked a game, and I like to do this from time to time for a lot of baseball, but I'll do it for basketball and football as well. Just go back and watch old games with really good broadcasters, nostalgic. And I just love to just listen to the broadcast while I'm jogging, but I like to watch part of it as well. And I get a kick out of it. And everybody has the same reaction when I tell them I do this. Like, Willie, do you have too much free time? Can I help you like find other hobbies or something?
You need a
like,
hobby or something?
Yeah. Because some people that I know that you would think would like to watch an occasional old game, they have no interest at all. But I had the idea to watch a game that was one that I remembered as a kid. It's 1986, week 3. So we're going to tweet this out if you want to participate with this. Because I thought it would be fun for a couple of young bucks like Adam and David, who were not watching this game back in the day, just to watch an old game and see what looks very different, what looks the same, what jumps out at you. The commercials, all of that stuff.
Everything.
I asked D-Mace to do the same thing, but also look at the scheme and see what looks the same and what's different about how teams approach and game plan compared to now. We actually asked Tim Hasselbeck this earlier today. He had a really interesting answer that there were some things that literally were not invented scheme-wise back then, how teams schemed up. So I thought it would be fun. It's a great Dolphins-Jets game that is fantastic from start to finish. It's got Dick Enberg, one of the great announcers of all time, and Merlin Olsen, who was a great player and also an actor on Little House on the Prairie. If you're our age, you know that he was in there. But that was the number one announcing team. They did Super Bowls together. So this was a featured game. Dan Marino in his prime, Don Shula and the Dolphins against a good Jets team that they just had a great hated rivalry. We were just talking about rivalries of college. The Jets-Dolphins back in that time, they had some great games, and that was one of them. So I won't tell you who won the game, but I will tell you that it is very entertaining start to finish. So we want to give people a couple of days and let them know that we're doing this. But if you're looking for something to do and you want to have some fun with us, we're going to circle back and have a discussion about what we saw, because it's hilarious, some of the things that you'll see. The fans in the stands and the fashion at the time. What you'll say, for example, I'll give you one that's going to be obvious to you and watch it. There's no yellow line for the first down. You won't have any idea if the guy got the first down or not. You might have an idea, but you won't see it on the line. Replay was brand new at the time. There'll be a lot of discussion on that. Your fantasy football scores, how you got them and absorb them during the game. These are the things that I'm just curious what people would have jump out at them. So because we're in July and we love football and there's no football going on, this is your assignment, should you choose to accept it.
Yeah, it was interesting just to sit down and because I haven't done that in a good while, especially not games that far back. It's interesting to go back and watch these games. And the one thing that I sort of noticed outside of some of the fun things is that the field was condensed. And what I mean by condensed is you look at today's football, they use, and Tim talked about this, they use every inch of the field. They try to pressure every inch of the field. And as the years went on, you started seeing that more and more happen. Now, Miami was doing it somewhat with their passing game, but you saw the New York Jets, they had a condensed field. A lot of packages that you see today, you saw them then, but they were condensed. They were done out of 2-back formations and not out of 3 wides. They were done out of 2 tight ends and not out of 4 wide. So I think a lot of things that you see on offense, some of the things, not a lot, but some of the things, it's there back then, but it's condensed. Now, same plays, but they've opened up the field now. They are doing it 3 and 4 wides instead of 2 tight ends, 2 receivers, or 2 backs, 2 receivers, or 3 receivers, something like that. So the field has widened, so to speak. And, they're using every inch of the back of the end zones on either side.
So here's what we're going to do. We're going to tweet out the game, which you can find on YouTube. We will tweet it out from our 1025 The Game account. We will share it a few times over the next couple of days. Our plan is on Thursday to go over what we found. So if you want to participate, we'll share the link on Twitter/X. We'll do it a couple of times over the next couple of days with the plan to review and share what we found on Thursday, probably in the 1 o'clock hour. But that is your assignment, as Willie said, if you choose to accept it, a la Mission Impossible. Speaking of Mission Impossible, here comes Jake Lyman and Connor Newt. Let's see if they can suck up as much air as Jared Stillman over the course of 4 hours. Again, Mission Impossible. Love you. Kidding. We'll be back at 11 o'clock. I don't know where I was going with that joke. I started it. It did not go well. I committed to the bit.
At least you tried.
At least I tried.
Yeah, at least you tried.
The
man.
lesson
That's all
is
that
never try. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to get out of here before I say something else stupid. Still in company with Jake and Connor coming up next.
matters. Be loved, love with your people. Have a safe, blessed, and wonderful Tuesday. Peace.